Chapter 631. Although the faint golden lines appeared very messy, Yang Tian was able to see that the arrangement of the faint golden lines on each bubble was the same. It seemed to be a naturally formed rune. The energy of the life rune produced by the 9 streams of energy intersecting each other loosened the moment it came into contact with the faint golden lines. At the same time, Yang Tian cells transmitted an extreme desire for power. Yang Tian immediately used his mind to transfer the origin power from the origin realm. When the origin power passed through Yang Tian's body, the cells began to devour the origin power like dry sponges. This was equivalent to doing 10 things at once. For Yang Tian, this was a very tiring task. In less than 3 minutes, he could not hold on any longer. After the rune array formed by the 9 streams of energy disappeared, the faint golden lines appeared on the bubble outside the cell nucleus again. At this moment, Yang Tian was surprised to find that the energy that was not absorbed by the cells was all absorbed by the faint golden lines and overflowed outside the body. The door in the cells closed once again. This was really too amazing. Yang Tian did not expect that the principle of cultivation in this world was actually like this. It seemed that after coming to this world, the changes in the cells in his body were due to the appearance of these strange runes. Then, this was simple. As long as he could find a way to arrange the rune array that was exactly the same as the 9 streams of energy in his body and produce the same life energy, the door in his cells would be constantly open. After that, all he needed to do was to continuously absorb energy. At this thought, Yang Tian asked the strange program in his mind, "Can this be done?" The strange program replied, "The information obtained at the moment is insufficient. A detailed reading is required." Yang Tian understood. He took a deep breath and continued to gather energy in his body, forming the 9 streams of energy and forming a strange rune array. This continued for half an hour before the strange program told Yang Tian that it was done. In order to let the strange program see the special rune array formed by the 9 streams of energy, Yang Tian did not pay attention to the cells in his body. Once he stopped, Yang Tian suddenly realized that his whole body was sore and weak. He could not help but be shocked. After inspecting the cells in his body, he was shocked to find that the cells in his body had aged significantly. If there was a mirror in a brightly lit environment, Yang Tian could see that he had turned into a middle-aged man. During the previous process, the strange program was also focused on reading the information of the rune array. It did not notice the changes in Yang Tian's body, so it did not remind Yang Tian. Although he couldn't see his own seed, Yang Tian could guess. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seems that this door can't be open for a long time. Although it restricts the cells from absorbing energy, it also prevents the external space and time energy from destroying the cells. Yang Tian knew that the real reason was that his cells were not strong enough. However, if he could figure out that kind of strange talisman array, it would be much easier for him to cultivate. His consciousness would be able to gather more power and concentrate on the aspect of power. This way, his cultivation speed would be much faster. After figuring this out, Yang Tian opened the door again. He transferred energy from the origin realm and let the cells in his body absorb it. At this time, the strange program had already returned to the bug brain pendant. It began to calculate and design that strange array. With the replenishment of energy, the cells were quickly repaired. Yang Tian returned to his youthful appearance. Huff! The whole process lasted for half a day. Although he had recovered, Yang Tian felt very tired. After opening his eyes, he let out a long breath. If he returned to his room at this time, even if the smell was bad, he would probably fall asleep quickly. Yang Tian looked at the sky and saw that there were at least a few more hours before daybreak. He reminded the little azure dragon before lying on the ground and snoring loudly. For the next few days, Yang Tian cultivated every night and opened the door to sleep during the day. Seeing that Yang Tian did not need to do chores or exercise, many people were dissatisfied and complained in private. As the head of this small courtyard, Karst had heard many unfair words. People were like this. They did not worry about scarcity but about inequality. Karst did not pay any attention to this. In truth, he had already known that Yang Tian cultivated at night and slept during the day. He had seen on the first night when Yang Tian cultivated. After that, Karst would open the door a crack every night to observe Yang Tian. As a cultivator, Karst could see that Yang Tian's rate of improvement was just too fast. On the first night, when Yang Tian cultivated for the first time, a powerful pulse of energy erupted from his body. Although it was only for an instant, Karst could sense that Yang Tian had broken through the early stage of impulsive and reached the mid-stage of impulsive. This was the same level of cultivation as him. On the second night, Yang Tian broke through the mid-stage of impulsive and reached the late stage of impulsive. The fourth day, the fifth day, although Yang Tian had not broken through to returnance in 7 or 8 days, Karst could sense that Yang Tian was not far from breaking through. When Karst heard the complaints of his subordinates and the newcomers, he sneered in disdain. Compared to Yang Tian, these people were just too mediocre. Their bodies did not even meet the requirements for cultivation, so Karst obviously would not let them see the basic cultivation methods of the Hui clan. This was not because Karst had bad intentions, but because it would be harmful to their bodies if they saw these things early. Very soon, the 10th night arrived. Yang Tian arrived at the courtyard on time. This time, Yang Tian was prepared to break through to a new level of cultivation. In reality, Yang Tian could have broken through to returnance long ago. The reason why he had waited until now was because he had been studying the special talisman array constructed from the 9 strands of energy with the Strange program. The Strange program had finished its calculations. Once Yang Tian broke through to returnance, he would be able to create a special talisman array that he could wear on his body at any time. After the Strange program's calculations, Yang Tian would only be able to use the talisman array for long periods of time once he reached returnance. Otherwise, the outcome would be the same as the first night. His cells would be destroyed. If this happened a few times, Yang Tian would not be far from death. Because the talisman array was designed based on the circulation of energy in Yang Tian's body, it was only useful to Yang Tian. The talisman array produced by every person was like the countless leaves in the world. They were never the same. Yang Tian had already laid down the foundation a few days ago, so it did not take long for his cells to undergo a qualitative change under the constant replenishment of energy from the origin world. At that moment, a powerful pulse of energy appeared in Yang Tian's body, spreading far and wide. Karst, who had always been paying attention to Yang Tian, obviously sensed it as well. This kid has finally reached returnance. He really is a genius rarely seen in 1,000 years. Karst could not help but sigh emotionally as he looked at Yang Tian's silhouette through the crack in the door. At that moment, Karst felt rather proud, admiring his own vision. The powerful pulse of energy from Yang Tian's body gradually weakened after a short burst before finally stabilizing. Phew, Xiaolong, I'll start thinking of a way for you later. You've worked hard during this period of time. Yang Tian sighed and smiled at the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon jumped onto Yang Tian's shoulder and happily rubbed its head against Yang Tian's cheek. The little blue dragon obviously wanted to become stronger. It always missed the time when it was a dragon, soaring through the sky. Creak! At that moment, the door opened. Karst finally could not help but walk out of the room and arrive before Yang Tian. Actually, Yang Tian also knew that Karst was watching from the side. Yang Tian, congratulations. Only at returnance can you be considered to have truly entered the path of cultivation, Karst said with a smile. Thank you for taking care of me. Otherwise, I would have to take several times longer. Yang Tian stood up and smiled. Let's go. Come sit in my room for a while, Karst said with a smile. All right. Yang Tian nodded. Woo, just as Karst turned around, the entire Hui clan's ancestral ground suddenly resounded with the heavy sound of a horn. Under the dim light, Karst's expression immediately changed. What's wrong? Yang Tian asked with a frown. Seeing Karst's stunned expression, Yang Tian knew that something bad had happened. As expected, Karst said with a solemn expression, "The beast wave is coming." Chapter 632. A beast wave. Yang Tian was also shocked. He had seen beasts attack cities on Earth, so he had no idea what a beast wave would be like in this world. Get up! Get up! Amidst the wailing of the alarm, a loud roar rang out from the neighboring courtyard. Karcha immediately reacted. He went to each room and woke up several dozen subordinates. He then opened up the armory and began to distribute weapons to everyone. There was a large blade, around 3 meters long. The blade was very thick and heavy. Against the attacks of the beasts, only a long weapon like this would be effective. Light weapons would probably break with a single touch from the beasts. Other than the blade, there was also a bow and arrow. The bow was even taller than a person. The flat body of the bow was made of some unknown metal. It was 3 fingers wide and as thick as a palm. It weighed over 50 kilograms. The bowstring was made from the tendons of a beast as thick as a finger. Yang Tian tested it out. He drew and released the bow, producing a thump. A bow like this was not something a normal person could draw. It required a force of at least 500 kilograms. Only then did Yang Tian understand why the mine's assessment would test one's strength. It was probably to select people who could draw the bow. After reaching returnants, Yang Tian could easily use the bow. It would be quite good if the other people in the courtyard could draw it 10 times. As for the arrows, the shaft was thicker than a thumb. The arrowhead was made of silver-white metal. It was triangular in shape and had 2 barbs. Once it entered a beast's body, it would not be squeezed out by the beast's muscles. With the bow on his back, Yang Tian took out a red blade from his storage bracelet. Even in this world, Yang Tian's blade was an extremely good weapon. Yang Tian had long since grown accustomed to it. Seeing that Yang Tian had his own weapon, Karcha did not say anything. He skillfully gathered his subordinates and charged out of the courtyard. They followed the main road outside and charged towards the outskirts of the clan's territory. Rumble. As they advanced, the ground began to shake. The beast horde in the distance was extremely close. Countless beasts charged over, causing the ground to tremble. At the same time, walls that were dozens of meters thick rose from the ground outside the clan's land. Under the dim light, Yang Tian turned around and looked behind him. He found that it wasn't just the periphery of the clan's land. There was also a thick wall rising from the ground behind him. If one were to look down from the sky, they would discover that within the territory of the Hui race, circular walls had been erected between the houses. In just 3 minutes, a total of 9 rings of walls were erected. From the outside to the inside, the walls grew taller and taller. The outermost wall was only about 20 meters wide, while the innermost circle was 50 meters wide. Now, Yang Tian finally understood why Scarface said he would be fine if he stayed in the mine, but if he came here, he might die. These selected miners turned out to be cannon fodders. Under Kacha's lead, they soon reached the top of the 20 meters high wall. Usually, there wouldn't be many people, but at this time, the walls were densely packed with people. There were at least 1 million people on this wall. This was because the clan's land was too big. It was even bigger than Hero City on Earth. Each team of dozens of people was responsible for about 20 meters of wall. There were obvious markings on the ground at the top of the wall. Kacha's subordinates, including Yang Tian, had a total of 48 people. They were divided into 3 groups by Kacha. After setting up the defense, Kacha ordered his subordinates to check the weapons. At this time, a large number of women and children came to the bottom of the wall. They took out all kinds of weapons from the armory and transported them to the wall. Yang Tian came to the wall and looked into the distance under the dim light. The beast horde hadn't appeared yet, but it was getting louder and louder. The ground was shaking even more violently. Even standing on the wall, he could feel his body shaking. 10 minutes later, a crossbow machine had been installed every 50 meters. Dozens of giant arrows as thick as an arm and dozens of meters long had also been installed on the crossbow, ready to be fired. These crossbows were pointed at the sky at a 45-degree angle, as if to deal with flying exotic beasts. At this time, the beast horde finally appeared. A curved black line appeared in Yang Tian's eyes, and black clouds appeared in the sky. Yang Tian only blinked his eyes and the black line on the ground became continuous, while the black clouds in the sky got closer. In less than 2 minutes, the beast horde would enter the attack range. At this time, the little blue dragon lying on Yang Tian's shoulder stood up and squeaked, expressing its eagerness to fight. Yang Tian comforted it. Xiaolong, don't worry. You'll be able to fight again soon. Don't worry. The little blue dragon slowly calmed down, but there was still an unresigned look in its eyes. At this time, Ka Cha, like the other team leaders nearby, began to shout to his subordinates, "Don't panic, everyone. Listen to my orders and don't waste arrows." After saying that, Ka Cha squatted down and leaned against the guardrail inside the wall. Yang Tian turned around and looked at Ka Cha. He saw Ka Cha waving at him. "Yang Tian, come here." Yang Tian immediately came to Ka Cha's side and put down the longbow in his hand. "Yang Tian, whether I can survive or not depends on you." Listening to this momentum, this is the biggest beast horde in 100 years. Your luck is not good. You actually caught up with it. If I gave you 10 years, you wouldn't be here. After Ka Cha finished speaking, Yang Tian said, "Release. As long as I'm alive, I won't let you die." Hearing Yang Tian's promise, Ka Cha finally felt a little relieved, but only a little. He didn't dare to guarantee that Yang Tian would keep his word. Ka Cha had already experienced it once and understood how terrifying a beast horde was. At that time, more than 99% of the people standing on this wall would die. 10 years ago, Ka Cha was just like his subordinates now, but he survived and was promoted to a squad leader. His life was pretty good, and in 10 years he had grown into a fatty. After briefly recalling the situation at that time, Ka Cha let out a long sigh. Just like the squad leader who died before him, he closed his eyes and adjusted his state of mind for a short time. He understood that in this situation, the more nervous and scared he was, the faster he would die. Rumble, the beast horde was getting closer and closer. In the sky, the moon hanging at the edge of the sky had already been covered by the flying beasts, and the ground had turned pitch black. At this time, the runes on the wall were activated, projecting a bright blue light into the distance and the sky. Yang Tian stood up and walked to the side of the wall, looking ahead. As soon as the light shone, he could see everything around him. On the ground, there were all kinds of strange beasts, all kinds of shapes and colors. From several hundred meters below the wall, he couldn't see the end. It was the same in the sky. How many strange beasts were there? Yang Tian sighed in his heart. Chapter 633. With such a large number of beasts, it was impossible to wipe them all out with manpower alone. Boom! Suddenly, there was an earth-shattering explosion. In Yang Tian's eyes, the beasts on the ground were instantly covered by countless sand and dust. Among the sand and dust, there were countless pieces of the beasts' bodies. It turned out that there were explosives buried dozens of kilometers away from the clan's land. This earth-shattering explosion shook Yang Tian's ears. The ground shook violently, as if there was a huge earthquake. If it was on Earth, such a powerful explosion would definitely cause the Earth's crust to shake. However, this land was simply too vast. Such an explosion was like a tickle to the entire land. Among the explosion, there were countless cries of the beasts. Very close to the city, the red blood was like a rainstorm mixed with sand and dust. Countless pieces of the beast's body parts and organs fell down. The people on the city wall were all drenched by this blood rain, as if they had just been fished out of a pool of blood. In the midst of this, dense bang-bang sounds could be heard. These were the sound of the beast's body parts and organs falling on the city wall, causing some people to cry out in pain. The explosion started near the city wall and spread all the way to the distance. This continuous explosion had killed countless beasts. There were explosives on the ground to deal with the beasts, but what about the sky? Buzz! There was a muffled sound. Before the explosion on the ground had subsided, when the flying beasts were pouncing down with their claws wide open, a red light screen suddenly appeared from the center of the clan's land, enveloping the beasts in the sky. This was a type of offensive rune energy. The red light screen was like a large net, rapidly rising and expanding in the sky. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire sky as far as Yang Tian could see. The red light net didn't last for long, but after it passed by, a large number of the beasts in the sky died. Their bodies were cut into countless pieces by the laser-like light net, falling toward the clan's land. Blood and flesh rained down on the clan's land again. There were also pieces of feathers falling from the sky, as if it was snowing heavily. Seeing the situation, Yang Tian heaved a sigh of relief. If the clan didn't have such weapons of mass destruction, they really wouldn't be able to stop the beast hordes. At that time, the entire clan's land would be trampled into ruins by the beast hordes. After a large number of beasts were killed, the beast horde calmed down for a short while. Within a radius of a few dozen kilometers, only a small number of beasts were left alive. As for the exotic beasts in the sky, they were basically cleared out. Let's look for life crystals. In order to reward everyone, it belongs to whoever finds it. At this moment, the voice of a squad leader came from the side. Yang Tian turned around and saw the man instructing his subordinates to search for the corpses of exotic beasts. Not only that person, but the people on the city walls were also in a mess. Karst did not move. He smiled and said, "How can there be so many life crystals? The first batch is made up of low-level mutated beasts, just like us. It's used in the early stages of a battle to exhaust the opponent. Don't think that easing is stupid." After Karst finished, Yang Tian asked, "Does that mean the beasts behind us have life crystals in their bodies?" Karst nodded and smiled bitterly. "That has nothing to do with us, because most of them are already dead." While the two of them were talking, the horde of beasts on the ground gathered together once more. The ground trembled once more, emitting rumbling sounds. Another dark cloud appeared on the horizon. Judging from the sound, there were not as many exotic beasts as before. They were moving very slowly, but they were much bigger. When they walked, they seemed to be very heavy. This was the second wave of exotic beasts on the ground. Karst finally stood up and said loudly, "Everyone get ready. The real battle is coming." After saying that, Karst raised his broadsword. With Karst's reminder, everyone became nervous again. The explosion just now killed a large number of exotic beasts, but it would not happen again. And those exotic beasts in the sky should have been attacked by the runes more than once. As expected, the dark cloud of exotic beasts in the sky came to the clan's land again. Buzz, another muffled sound was heard. The red light rose again, killing a large number of exotic beasts in the sky. Inside the clan's land, it rained blood and flesh again. The bodies of exotic beasts fell like hailstones. Yang Tian noticed that the red light curtain showed signs of weakening. The area it covered was reduced by a third compared to before. Based on the weakening, that attack could only be used twice. Although the flying exotic beasts were killed in large numbers again, they soon gathered in the sky outside the clan's land and flew towards the clan's land. Exotic beasts were not afraid of death. They wanted to use their flesh and blood to wear down the defenses of the clan's land. They wanted to clear the way for their more powerful brethren. In the center of the clan's land, a third light curtain rose. Just as Yang Tian had expected, this time, the coverage of the light curtain was reduced by a third. There was one more time, but it could no longer cover the outer area of the clan's land. In other words, the area where Yang Tian and the others were on the wall was basically undefended. Roar, screech, countless beast cries came from the sky. Prepare to attack. At this time, the team leaders operating the crossbows on the wall all shouted. When the crossbows were operated, they made a series of creaking sounds. They were about to stand upright. Huff, huff, huff. The sound of the wind was dense. The flying exotic beasts in the sky swooped down one after another, stirring the air and making a series of rumbling sounds. Fire, 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 boom, boom, boom. Facing the incoming exotic beasts, the team leaders in charge of the crossbows waved their hands. The huge crossbows made a series of ejecting sounds, shooting dozens of huge arrows as thick as an arm into the sky. The huge arrows whistled as they rushed towards the sky. There were thousands of crossbows on the wall, firing at the same time. It was like a rain of arrows, covering the incoming exotic beasts. Suddenly, a series of popping sounds were heard. Then, the exotic beasts' cries were heard. The huge arrows penetrated their bodies. There were many exotic beasts, and their bodies were huge. There was no need to aim. Most of these flying exotic beasts were like huge bats with fleshy wings and beast heads. Some other flying exotic beasts were like eagles with sharp beaks and claws. No matter what kind they were, their wingspans were at least 10 meters long. Such huge exotic beasts could easily catch an adult and bring him into the sky. The flying exotic beasts that were shot at their vital parts fell down one by one. To Yang Tian and the others, it was like the sky was falling down. Chapter 634. With a series of thuds, the dead and injured beasts that could not fly all fell down, smashing into the walls. A few people who were unable to dodge in time were directly smashed to death, injured, or pushed to the bottom of the walls. Miserable cries rang out. Kill! Kill! Even more people yelled as they charged at the beasts that were still alive. It was the same on the walls, and it was the same between the first and second walls. Everyone seemed to have gone mad when they saw the beasts that were still alive. Spurt. Usually, Karst gave people the impression that he was weak and powerless. But now his face was distorted. He slashed the big knife in his hand into the head of a strange beast that had fallen on the wall, but hadn't died yet. A series of thumping sounds rang out in the surroundings, as well as the furious roars and wails of the beasts. For a moment, the top of the wall was thrown into chaos. Yang Tian was already a returnance cultivator. He was extremely fast, easily dodging the injured beasts that had fallen to the top of the wall. With a swing of his blade, he cut off their necks. These low-level beasts were not his opponent at all. Unable to use formations to attack, huge arrows constantly shot out from the other 8 walls, shooting down the flying beasts one after another. They fell to the bottom of the walls, where they were killed by the people waiting there. Huff! 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 A while later, violent gusts of wind rang out. At the same time, the miserable cries of humans rang out. Yang Tian raised his head and saw that the flying beasts had already swooped down in large numbers. They flew over the walls and grabbed the humans into the air. Once they were high enough, they let go of their claws. Rumble! At this moment, the beasts on the ground had already reached the bottom of the thick walls and were ramming their heads against them. Use your bows! At this moment, someone roared out. As a result, they all picked up their bows and knocked arrows, shooting at the flying beasts or the beasts below the walls. With a bang, Yang Tian kicked a flying-type ultra beast off the wall. He picked up a bow on the ground and began to shoot towards the sky. Cultivators were different from ordinary humans. It was very difficult for ordinary people to draw such a large bow, but Yang Tian could easily draw it. Moreover, the arrows he shot were always accurate. Each of Yang Tian's arrows could almost cause an exotic beast to fall from the sky. Very quickly, Yang Tian finished shooting the quiver of arrows. Here! At this time, Karst appeared in front of Yang Tian and handed 2 quivers of arrows to Yang Tian. Yang Tian didn't say anything and continued shooting. Under such circumstances, they had forgotten the time. There was only one word in their minds, and that was kill. If they didn't kill these beasts, they would be the ones to die. Boom! After an unknown period of time, several kilometers away, the wall collapsed, forming a gap that was tens of meters wide. The beast horde poured in like a tide through this gap. After entering the wall, the exotic beasts split into 2 groups and began to surround the second wall. When the exotic beasts on the ground attacked the second wall, a roar rang out in the sky. The flying beasts in the sky above the clan's land all turned around and returned. Huff! Yang Tian let out a long breath. In just a few minutes, Yang Tian had emptied 5 quivers of arrows. He felt that his arms were a little numb. Even if he was a returnance cultivator, he was only a leaf in the ocean in a battle like this. Seeing this, Karst sat down on the ground and let out a long breath, just like Yang Tian. Although the beast horde had already broken through the first wall, the people on the wall had obtained a short period of rest. Yang Tian glanced at the beast horde. These exotic beasts were all very large. Even the smallest of them was the size of an unmutated cow on Earth. There were countless types of exotic beasts. Some were like tigers, some were like leopards, elephants, pigs, deer. These exotic beasts all had thick skin and long armor. Just one of them was difficult for a normal human to deal with, let alone when there were so many of them. Behind the first wall, there were many women, children, and old people. They were the family of the people on the first wall. Under the trampling of the beast horde, they quickly disappeared into the crowd. Many of the people on the wall saw their loved ones trampled to death and directly jumped down from the wall in grief. Yang Tian couldn't bear to watch any longer. He turned around and sat down beside Karst. The ground above the wall was covered in a thick layer of blood. The blood belonged to both humans and exotic beasts. The smell of it was pungent. Yang Tian, you can leave. Suddenly, Ka Cha lifted his head, glanced at Yang Tian, and said indifferently. Yang Tian smiled. Karst, didn't I say before? As long as I'm alive, you won't die. Karst shook his head. This time, the exotic beast broke through the first wall so quickly. They'll break through the second and third very soon. We're stuck in the middle of the beast horde. Those starving exotic beasts won't let us go. You can escape by yourself, but it'll be difficult if you take me with you. There will be even more powerful exotic beasts later. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late. As soon as Karst finished speaking, the sound of another wall collapsing came from afar. Yang Tian glanced at the corpses and living people lying on the wall, then turned to look at the second wall. The second wall was several hundred meters away from the first. At this time, shouts came from above, and arrows were shot down from the wall. Some of the exotic beasts that rushed and hit the second wall, creating a series of rumbling sounds. Some of the exotic beasts were probably hungry and began to eat the corpses on the ground, whether they were human or their own kind. Some of the hungry exotic beasts with nothing to eat began to rush up the stone steps to the top of the wall. After a short rest, the people on the wall who could still move picked up their weapons again to resist the attacks of the exotic beasts. Battle cries came from the top of the wall again. Roar! Yang Tian raised his saber and was about to join the battle when suddenly a beast roar came from afar. Yang Tian turned to look and saw a tiger-like exotic beast with black armor slowly walking over. This fellow was 10 meters long and had a terrifying aura. The energy waves coming from its body were stronger than ordinary exotic beasts. Finally, he saw an exotic beast of a higher level. Squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon that had been lying on Yang Tian's shoulder suddenly squeaked. It told Yang Tian that this exotic beast had a life crystal in its body. It wanted to eat this exotic beast's life crystal to recover its strength. Dragons are also a type of mutated beast. They have their own unique cultivation method. Yang Tian immediately understood what little azure dragon was trying to say. Originally, Yang Tian wanted to let the little blue dragon try to cultivate the Huey family's cultivation method. All right. Yang Tian nodded after the little blue dragon finished speaking. He looked at the majestic exotic beast from afar and squinted his eyes. Chapter 635. Yang Tian, what are you doing? That's a returnance, Bayan. It'll be rather difficult for you to defeat it with your current level of cultivation. Not to mention, there are many other exotic beasts around it. Once you're surrounded, it'll be very difficult for you to escape. Seeing Yang Tian's expression, Ka Cha knew what Yang Tian wanted to do, so he hurriedly tried to persuade him. Yang Tian smiled. I need its life crystal, and I'll definitely do it. The exotic beasts of this world would only produce life crystals when they reached returnance. With that, Yang Tian moved and directly jumped off the 20-meter-tall wall. He charged toward the Bai and several hundred meters away. The little blue dragon lay on Yang Tian's shoulder, staring at the Baian. Its eyes were filled with desire. Yang Tian landed lightly on the wall before charging toward the Baian with lightning-like speed. A powerful presence erupted from Yang Tian's body, causing the low-level exotic beasts in front of him to panic. They all instinctively dodged. Roar! Seeing this, the Baian let out a deep howl. It slapped the ground with its thick claws. With this howl, the surrounding exotic beasts all widened their eyes. An extremely vicious light appeared in their eyes, and they no longer feared Yang Tian. They all charged toward Yang Tian. It seemed like the Bayan was the leader of the pack, and the surrounding exotic beasts were all under its control. This fellow had to be killed in a single strike. This was because the presence Yang Tian had erupted with could not be maintained for long. At this moment, countless strands of origin force had been compressed by his mental energy, condensing into a ball and lighting up countless cells. When a cell lit up, it would spread to the surrounding cells. This was a method of increasing his strength that Yang Tian had comprehended before cultivating the Hui, each clan's basic cultivation method. This method of eruption could increase his battle prowess by several times. The downside was that it consumed far too quickly. Yang Tian let out a loud shout. He stepped on the head of an elephant-like beast and leaped high into the air. Flipping in the air, Yang Tian's body fell rapidly, landing on the back of another exotic beast and bouncing up again. After doing this several times, Yang Tian had crossed several hundred meters and was now less than 50 meters away from the nightmare beast. Yang Tian leaped tens of meters into the air again. At this moment, diagonally below him was the nightmare beast that he was hunting. Yang Tian had already pushed his strength to the limit. The energy pulsing from him had already surpassed the returnant's realm. Facing the undefeatable Yang Tian, a look of panic appeared in the Yang's eyes. Yang Tian gripped his saber with both hands and slashed down at the young beast. Chi, with an ear-piercing whistle, a red crescent-shaped saber, Chi shot out of the saber and slashed at the nightmare beast. Spurt, with a muffled sound, the nightmare beast was cleaved in half from head to tail by Yang Tian's powerful strike. Yang Tian, who had landed beside the two halves of the nightmare beast, coldly called out to the surrounding exotic beasts. The surrounding exotic beasts were forced back by Yang Tian's powerful presence. They could not help but take a few steps back. The little blue dragon reacted very quickly as well. It leaped to the center of the nightmare beast's corpse and found an oval, silver-white life crystal in its chest. The life crystal was not large, only the size of an egg. It pulsed with energy. After finding the life crystal, the little blue dragon immediately returned to Yang Tian's shoulder. At this moment, less than 3 minutes had passed since Yang Tian had set off from the walls. After returning to Yang Tian's shoulder, Yang Tian turned around and left. The surrounding exotic beasts had already reacted and charged at him. If he did not leave now, he would die when the energy in his body was depleted. The little blue dragon lay on Yang Tian's shoulder and hugged the life crystal tightly with its 2 claws, as if it was afraid of dropping it. There were no exotic beasts stronger than the nightmare beast around, so they could not stop Yang Tian from leaving. Yang Tian soon returned to the top of the wall. After dropping his saber, Yang Tian sat down on the blood-soaked ground and let out a long sigh. In just a few minutes, the force in Yang Tian's origin realm had been reduced by at least a third. His entire body was numb, and he could not even lift his saber. Yang Tian estimated that he could only use this method of outburst once more, unless he had energy to replenish it. The little blue dragon could swallow this kind of life crystal directly. After Yang Tian returned to the top of the wall, the little blue dragon held the life crystal and began to gnaw on it like a squirrel gnawing on a pine cone. A series of crunching sounds could be heard. The surrounding people, including Karst, saw the life crystal between the little blue dragon's claws, and their eyes widened. Life crystals were very valuable. If they could obtain one, they would be able to live a wealthy life for the rest of their lives, and would not have to risk their lives here. Some people saw the life crystal in the little blue dragon's arms, and their eyes were filled with greed. However, no one dared to go forward and snatch it. They had all seen how Yang Tian had killed the nightmare beast earlier. Even if Yang Tian looked exhausted, they did not dare to go forward. Moreover, there was still a huge crisis to deal with. Even if they managed to snatch the life crystal, it was still a question of whether they could survive this beast horde. The exotic beasts on both sides of the wall surged towards the wall in large numbers, forcing the people on the wall to move towards the center. Yang Tian was now in the middle of this section of the wall. The screams of humans and the roars of beasts could be heard from both sides, as well as the crunching sounds of bones being chewed. Soon, thousands of people were squeezed together. After more than 10 minutes, Yang Tian finally felt his body returning to normal. He picked up his sword and stood up. At this time, the little blue dragon had finished eating the life crystal. Roar! Ah! Ah! The roars of beasts and the screams of humans were getting closer and closer. It's over. It's over. Carr saw the situation and kept mumbling to himself. His eyes were filled with despair. Boom! Boom! Yang Tian looked towards the second section of the wall and saw that the beasts were attacking even more fiercely. There were already cracks on a section of the wall. It seemed like it could not hold on for much longer. The people on the second section of the wall were the same as those on the first section of the wall. More than 90% of them were normal humans. The only difference was that they could live a little longer. Yang Tian was thinking that he would have to carry Karst to the second section of the wall. The Hui family had a strict rule to deal with this kind of beast horde. Before the wall was breached, the people on the wall could not leave without permission. With his ability, it was still possible for him and Karst to survive. Roar! Just as Yang Tian was about to move, the little blue dragon suddenly let out a deep roar. Next, it flew into the air and its body began to grow rapidly. After eating a life crystal, the little blue dragon finally regained its transformation ability. Chapter 636. After circling in the air, the little blue dragon transformed into a dragon that was more than 10 meters long. Although it had swallowed a life crystal, this size was the limit of the little blue dragon's transformation. It was still unable to transform into a dragon that was more than 10 meters long like before. After swallowing a life crystal, the little blue dragon regained its ability to fly. The little blue dragon was different from Yang Tian. Yang Tian needed to go through complicated cultivation to continuously level up. However, it was much simpler for the little blue dragon. It only needed to swallow a life crystal, just like in the original universe. Roar! After transforming, the little blue dragon let out a low howl. Yang Tian carried Kacha and leaped onto the little blue dragon's back. The little blue dragon immediately carried Yang Tian and Kacha to the second wall. Seeing a dragon flying over, the people on the second wall almost shot at the little blue dragon. Fortunately, they saw Yang Tian on the little blue dragon's back. At this moment, everyone was very sensitive. After landing on the second wall, the people around stayed far away as they were afraid of the little blue dragon. After carrying Kacha down from the little blue dragon's back, Yang Tian picked up a bow from the ground and joined the battle, shooting at the exotic beasts below. Although it had swallowed a life crystal, the little blue dragon's cultivation level did not increase to return its. After bringing Yang Tian and Kacha over, it was already very tired. With the little blue dragon's current ability, it could only bring Yang Tian and Kacha over. It could not save any more people. More than 10 minutes later, the people on the first wall opposite Yang Tian finally could not hold on under the attack of the exotic beasts. They all jumped down from the wall. They would rather fall to their deaths than be torn apart alive by the exotic beasts. The first line of defense of the Hui race's land had completely disappeared. Next, it was the second wall. Less than half an hour later, the second protective wall was also breached by the exotic beasts ramming. The same thing happened again. The little blue dragon then carried Yang Tian and Kacha to the third wall. The race's land was very big. Yang Tian had only seen a small portion of it. At least a few million people had died because of the two walls had been breached. This world was just too cruel. In the eyes of cultivators, the lives of ordinary people were not worth mentioning. When the beast tide came, if the cultivators had come to help the ordinary humans defend, there wouldn't have been so many casualties. It was impossible for the defensive walls to be broken through so quickly, for defensive walls were breached in a row, and the sun in the sky had already risen to midair. With the help of Little Azure Dragon, Yang Tian, who had retreated to the fifth wall, could no longer bear to look at the situation below the wall. Yang Tian understood that the Hui race's cultivators were using this method to reduce the number of exotic beasts. When the exotic beasts killed a lot of people, their numbers would decrease as well. As for the exotic beasts, they would order the low-level exotic beasts to attack first. Only then would the high-level exotic beasts appear. The Hui race's cultivators had the same idea as the exotic beasts. There seemed to be no difference between humans and beasts in this aspect. After fighting for half a day, although Yang Tian did not directly come into contact with the exotic beasts, he used his bow and arrow to kill thousands of them. At this time, Yang Tian's hands were already numb. When the fifth wall was about to be breached, the cultivators finally made their move. After breaking through 4 walls, at least 70% of the exotic beasts had died. The high-level exotic beasts finally appeared. "We survived," Kacha let out a long sigh and muttered when he saw the cultivators finally making their move. After saying this, he patted Yang Tian's shoulder and smiled. "Yang Tian, it's all thanks to you that I was able to survive this time." Kacha's eyes were filled with gratitude. Yang Tian smiled. "It's nothing. I want to know why the exotic beasts gathered together to attack the humans." Kacha said, "In the flame zone where we live, exotic beasts make up the majority of the population. In order to obtain life crystals, cultivators kill exotic beasts in large numbers. Actually, the high-level exotic beasts are as smart as humans. They can't tolerate such things happening continuously. Under the orders of the Beast King, the exotic beasts began to attack human settlements in groups. At first, the scale was not very large. Later on, as the humans occupied more and more land in this area, the number of exotic beasts gathered increased. Now, it has developed into a beast tide. What you see is the Hui race facing a beast tide. Far away, the other family territories are also facing the same attack. Countless years had passed. Every time there was a beast tide, many families would disappear from this vast area. After a beast tide, new families will rise. Humans and exotic beasts wear each other down like this. Do you know why?" Kacha asked in the end. Yang Tian thought carefully and said, "Because in this world, humans and beasts don't have diseases. As long as they're born and don't encounter any accidents, they can die of old age." After Yang Tian said this, Kacha was stunned. He then said, "Diseases are already a legend. You're right. No matter if it's exotic beasts or humans, they have to use this method to wear each other down. Actually, what I want to say is that the families want to obtain large amounts of life crystals. Normally, the exotic beasts are scattered across the vast area of the flame zone. To obtain life crystals, they have to travel a long way. However, with a beast tide, it's different. After the low-level exotic beasts are worn down, the mid-level and high-level exotic beasts will appear and gather in large numbers. The families can obtain large amounts of life crystals in one go." After Kacha finished speaking, Yang Tian nodded. He knew the root of the reason. He had thought of it before. Anyone who was slightly smarter could guess what Kacha said. Birth, old age, illness, and death were the natural laws. But among these 4, besides birth, no one wanted to grow old, get sick, or die. However, if any of these 4 were missing, it would go against the laws of nature. The group of people who stood at the top of this world naturally understood this principle. Therefore, they could only make up for it later. He quickly tossed this thought out of his mind. Because to him, even if this was true, what could he do? As the two spoke, thousands of cultivators leaped over their heads and charged towards the beast tide. The combat strength of cultivators was incomparable to that of ordinary humans. When the beast tide appeared before, ordinary humans were quickly drowned by them. But now, the situation was reversed. Under the attack of the cultivators, the exotic beasts, which outnumbered the cultivators, died in droves. All Yang Tian could hear were the roars and screams of the exotic beasts. Looking at the situation below the wall, Kacha smiled at Yang Tian and said, "Yang Tian, go." According to the rules, anyone who participates in the battle must hand over half of the life crystals obtained after killing the exotic beasts. The rest belongs to themselves. Remember, don't use your storage tools, because everyone is watching. Yang Tian had rested enough by now. He nodded at Katja and then jumped onto the little blue dragon's back with his sword. The little blue dragon carried Yang Tian and quickly flew towards the group of high-level exotic beasts in the distance. At this time, there were already cultivators fighting with the high-level exotic beasts. Katja looked at the horizon and immediately turned around to hide in the storage room behind the wall. Another black line appeared on the horizon. A large number of flying exotic beasts appeared again. Chapter 637. The leader of the beast horde was extremely smart. Once the cultivators moved out, it would send flying exotic beasts to attack the clansmen so that they could keep the cultivators at bay. When the ordinary humans and weaker cultivators saw the beast horde in the sky, they all hid in their houses or underground bunkers like Katja. Now, it was a battle between the powerful cultivators and the exotic beasts. The little blue dragon carried Yang Tian out of the territory and flew straight ahead. They landed in a place where there were relatively fewer beasts. There was an exotic beast there. It was 7 meters long and had a single horn. It was covered in faint red fur and looked rather similar to a cow. Clearly, it was a herbivorous exotic beast. However, in a beast horde like this, both carnivorous and herbivorous exotic beasts only had humans as their enemies. They would only be hunted down by the carnivorous exotic beasts after the beast horde ended. As soon as they landed, Yang Tian charged at the exotic beast with his blade. It was also a returnant's exotic beast. The little blue dragon had chosen it as its target. Without his cells lighting up like before, Yang Tian's battle prowess was no longer as great as before. His speed had also slowed down. Faced with Yang Tian's charge, the exotic beast lowered its head and charged at Yang Tian. When the two of them came into contact, Yang Tian quickly dodged to the side and slashed at the exotic beast with his blade. During this process, there was a plop. The slash was actually unable to cut through the exotic beast's skin. Yang Tian was surprised and dodged to the side. This was because there was a whooshing sound in front of him. A black shadow was whipping at him. The exotic beast had a long tail, which was also its weapon. The tail brushed past Yang Tian's face, causing a gust of wind that made Yang Tian's face hurt. If he had been struck by the tail, he would definitely have been injured. The powerful tail made up for the exotic beast's inability to turn around nimbly, preventing enemies from attacking it from the sides or behind. Yang Tian wasn't the only one dealing with this exotic beast. There was also the little blue dragon. When Yang Tian dodged to the side, the little blue dragon happened to be charging at him. Its tail slapped the side of the exotic beast's head. It looked like a slap to the exotic beast's face. Pung! A muffled sound was heard. Although the little blue dragon's current realm wasn't as high as this exotic beast's, its physical strength was very strong. The unicorn fell to the ground after being slapped by the little blue dragon's tail. Yang Tian seized the opportunity and flashed to the side of the exotic beast, stabbing his blade into its neck before it could turn over. At this moment, a powerful origin power surged out from the blade and destroyed most of the unicorn's internal organs. The unicorn's eyes were wide open. It twitched a little before it died completely. It took less than 20 seconds from the beginning of the attack to the end of the exotic beast. As soon as the unicorn was killed, a slender exotic beast that looked like a cheetah with light blue scales pounced from the side. Yang Tian didn't have time to retrieve the life crystal in the beast's carcass. He pulled out his sword and attacked the blue leopard. The little blue dragon was very eager for the life crystal in the exotic beast carcass. It took the opportunity to land on the ground. At this moment, Yang Tian swung his sword at the blue leopard. Under the control of his spiritual power, 3 red sword auras slashed at the blue leopard from 3 different directions. Boom, boom, boom. As Yang Tian expected, the blue leopard was extremely fast. It twisted its body a few times and dodged to the side agilely. Yang Tian's 3 sword auras missed and hit the ground, creating 3 trenches in the ground. During the battle, Yang Tian glanced at the little blue dragon. He saw the little blue dragon lying beside the carcass. It opened its mouth wide and bit down on the carcass neck, tearing off a large chunk of meat. The little blue dragon rarely bit down in battle. He didn't think it would be so powerful. After dodging Yang Tian's attack, the blue leopard flashed and charged at Yang Tian once more. Yang Tian went up to meet it once more. One man and one beast. Their figures flashed nonstop as they tangled together. There were also cultivators fighting exotic beasts nearby. The cultivators who could fight the beasts seemed to be even more powerful than Yang Tian. They easily slew the returnants' beasts one by one and removed their life crystals from their corpses. Although they all had storage tools, these cultivators followed the rules. After finding their life crystals, they put them in the leather pouches hanging from their waists. Many of the powerful cultivators' pouches were filled to the brim with life crystals. Seeing this, Yang Tian felt envious. The little blue dragon quickly tore open the carcass and found a life crystal the size of a goose egg. It directly swallowed it. The little blue dragon desired to become stronger. It obviously wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. After swallowing the life crystal, the little blue dragon turned around and fought the blue leopard with Yang Tian. The blue leopard was extremely cunning. After the little blue dragon joined the battle, it immediately turned around and fled into the distance. However, before it could run very far, an arrow suddenly flew out of nowhere and stabbed into its forehead. Afterward, a black-robed man with a bow arrived. He cut open the blue leopard's carcass with a blade and took out a silver-white life crystal. Yang Tian was very familiar with this black-robed man. He was the He Xianwen general who had tested Yang Tian in the mine. After taking the life crystal, He Xianwen general arrived before Yang Tian with a few flashes. At this moment, He Xianwen general radiated with a powerful presence. Yang Tian estimated that he was a cultivator of the illusion realm at the very least. If one was a cultivator of the illusion realm based on whether or not they had an energy world within them, then Yang Tian was one. This was because he had the origin realm within him. However, Yang Tian was only a returnants cultivator right now. He could probably only use the battle prowess of the illusion realm after breaking through to returnants. Not bad. You've actually reached returnants in such a short amount of time. Did you consume some kind of pill? He Xianwen general looked at Yang Tian and asked out of curiosity. Yang Tian did not know how to answer, so he only nodded. Work hard. I have high hopes for you. Once this battle is over, I'll take care of you. With that, He Xianwen general tossed the life crystal in his hand to the little blue dragon. Little azure dragon did not reject the life crystal. It immediately held the life crystal in its mouth, stretched its neck, and swallowed it into its stomach. He Xianwen general smiled and left in a flash. After swallowing 2 life crystals, the little blue dragon's presence became chaotic. It was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. It was obvious that the little blue dragon was about to break through. Xiaolong, let's retreat, Yang Tian immediately said to the little blue dragon after glancing around. At this moment, the flying beasts in the sky had already circled above the ancestral ground. They would swoop down in groups from time to time. Many of the attacking cultivators received the order and began to retreat. Killing the beasts for life crystals was very important, but it was more important to preserve the ancestral ground. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon had just retreated to a broken wall when a red cloud suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The red cloud was extremely fast. In a few blinks of an eye, it had arrived above the ancestral ground. Seeing the red things, Yang Tian could not help but widen his eyes in shock. This was because the red cloud was actually a large group of red mechs. No, they were not mechs, but machines. When he was in the mine, Yang Tian had heard the Dead by Song mention that there were machines on this continent. Yang Tian's understanding was that the machines were robots controlled by artificial intelligence. As soon as the machines arrived, they began to attack the flying beasts in the sky. Compared to the cultivators, the machines used high-tech weapons with shocking lethality. Large groups of flying beasts were killed and fell from the sky. Of course, there were also quite a few robots that fell from the sky under the attacks of the exotic beasts, smashing into the ground and exploding into fireballs like highly explosive bombs. Chapter 638. Boom! A humanoid robot that was at least 10 meters tall was carrying a mutated beast. It crashed less than 100 meters away from Yang Tian and exploded. One of the broken pieces of the robot landed less than 10 meters away from Yang Tian. Yang Tian used his spiritual power to pick up the broken piece and took it in his hand. It was a piece of red metal. It was about the size of his palm and was slightly thinner than his palm. It was very light in his hand, weighing less than 1 or 2 grams. While it was light, it was extremely tough. Yang Tian used his blade to cut it and left a shallow mark. It seemed that those gigantic robots were not as heavy as he had imagined. Just as Yang Tian was about to throw the broken piece of metal away, he suddenly realized that it was double-layered. The surface layer was extremely thin. Yang Tian used the tip of his blade to scrape off the thinnest layer, revealing the dense runes. Seeing these runes, Yang Tian's eyes widened. He did not expect that the automatons would know how to use rune technology. With the automatons joining the battle, the beast horde in the sky was quickly dispersed. After destroying the mutated beasts in the sky, the tens of thousands of automatons formed a red cloud and flew into the distance. They quickly disappeared from Yang Tian's sight. Yang Tian threw away the broken piece of metal in his hand and looked at where one of the robots had exploded. There was a huge crater there. The sand and stones on the ground were all crystallized from the high temperature of the explosion. The powerful cultivators had already pushed the battle further away from their home. It seemed that the Huir family had won this battle. His surroundings had become quiet. Yang Tian quickly stood up and walked to the edge of the crater. The explosion had created a crater that was almost 10 meters wide on the hard ground. The crater was pitch black with green smoke rising from it. It was filled with a pungent smell of burnt flesh. There were a few pieces of beast meat and some broken pieces of metal at the bottom of the crater. Yang Tian had only come over out of curiosity and wanted to take a look. Just as he was about to turn and leave, a red light suddenly shone from the bottom of the crater. Yang Tian furrowed his brows and immediately jumped to the bottom of the pit. Using his saber, he pushed aside a clump of sticky, black substance. After the surface was removed, a finger-sized red, crystal-like object was revealed. What is this? Yang Tian's eyes widened. He knew that it was not a life crystal. If it were a life crystal, it would release energy waves. However, the red crystal that was the size of a fingertip did not release any energy at all. With a flash of thought, Yang Tian used his mental power to pull it out. After grabbing the red crystal, Yang Tian jumped out of the hole and returned to the wall. At that moment, the little blue dragon was lying on the ground with its eyes squinted as it digested the 2 life crystals that it had just swallowed. Judging from the energy waves emitted from the little blue dragon's body, he could tell that it was about to advance in rank. The battle prowess of the Azure Dragon at Returnance was extremely great. It was not something that Returnance beasts could compare to. The surroundings had calmed down. Many ordinary humans came out of their hiding places and searched for beast carcasses among the broken buildings. To ordinary humans, the carcasses of these beasts were food, and nutritious food at that. They did not mind the fact that these beasts had human carcasses in their stomachs. Yang Tian placed the red crystal in front of his eyes and looked at it again and again. On the surface, it looked like a normal red crystal, but Yang Tian's instincts told him that it was not that simple. After some thought, Yang Tian used a sliver of his mental power to enter the red crystal. Suddenly, Yang Tian's eyes widened. What appeared in his vision were countless densely packed threads of various colors. There was a red ball hanging from each of these threads at certain intervals. It was because of the existence of these red balls that the crystal looked red. This should be the brain of a mechanical life. At that moment, the voice of a strange program rang out in Yang Tian's head. Yang Tian nodded and continued to use his mental power to enter the crystal. At that moment, Yang Tian's mental power had only stopped at the surface of the crystal. When Yang Tian's mental power entered the center of the red crystal and saw what was inside, he was shocked once again. This was because a formation disk composed of countless runes floated in the center of the crystal. Within the formation disk was a naked, beautiful woman with long red hair. Her eyes were closed as she lay in the center of the disk. She seemed to be asleep. There was actually a human in the brain of a mechanical life. Could it be, just as Yang Tian was guessing, the beautiful young woman lying on the disk suddenly opened her eyes? She seemed to have sensed that some kind of energy had intruded into this world that belonged to her. The beautiful woman who woke up sat up and looked around again and again. Although she sensed that something had intruded into this world, she was unable to see it. Out of curiosity, Yang Tian used his mental power to create a shape and appeared before the beautiful woman. "Who are you?" Seeing Yang Tian appear in front of her, the beautiful woman asked with a frown. She also spoke in human language, which made Yang Tian feel that his previous guess was more accurate. "I'm a human. What about you?" Yang Tian asked with a smile. To the beautiful woman, Yang Tian's answer and question were a little strange. For a moment, the beautiful woman did not know how to answer Yang Tian's question. Yang Tian continued, "The mechanical life was originally human, right? In order to have powerful abilities, you transferred your consciousness into the machine. This way, you can perfectly control powerful machines." After Yang Tian finished speaking, the beautiful woman could not help but laugh and say, "You're only half right. In fact, we should be considered half human. We've never really had a physical body like yours in this world." "What do you mean?" Yang Tian asked. The beautiful woman said, "We were all born in a virtual world. Like you, we were born as children and slowly grew up. In that world, we can live like you humans who have physical bodies, experience all kinds of things, feel happiness, and experience pain. If we didn't know that we're just programmed life forms and that the world is illusory, it would be even more perfect. In order to see this real world, we used machines to come to this world. Through machines, we communicate and fight with you. The reason why we're called half-human is that our ancestors were humans. Before our physical bodies died, our ancestors transferred their consciousness into what you call the virtual world to continue living. In this virtual world, we can also reproduce. In fact, this is another way for life to evolve. We're the same origin, aren't we?" "I see." Yang Tian nodded. The beautiful woman sized up Yang Tian and asked, "How did you enter this world?" Chapter 639. "How did you enter this world?" asked the automaton beauty. Yang Tian smiled. "Have you heard of spirit power?" The beauty nodded and smiled. "It's nice to meet you. I'm Mancy. What about you?" "Yang Tian," answered Yang Tian. "I hope to see you again in the future." With that, Mancy's figure faded and disappeared into the rune formation. The rune formation she was in not only had the function of preserving consciousness, but it also had the function of teleportation. When Mancy was being teleported, Yang Tian felt a powerful suction force. If he had not tried his best to control it, this sliver of spirit power with consciousness would have been teleported away with Mancy. Yang Tian guessed that Mancy had been teleported back to the huge virtual world. After Mancy left, Yang Tian withdrew his consciousness from the red crystal. Looking at the red crystal in his hand, Yang Tian let out a long sigh. Originally, he thought that the automatons were purely intelligent machines like Bell. However, that was not the case. The automatons were essentially humans, but they had the consciousness of humans and the bodies of machines. After a long time, the automatons were like humans, beasts, and other races. They had become a unique life form in this world. After putting the red crystal into his storage bracelet, Yang Tian began to pay attention to the little blue dragon. It seemed like only a short time had passed since he entered the red crystal world, but it had actually been almost 20 minutes. The little blue dragon had almost completely digested the energy of the two life crystals. Yang Tian waited for more than 10 minutes before the little blue dragon's body emitted a powerful energy wave. It then weakened and gradually stabilized. The little blue dragon had finally reached the returnant's realm. The reason why it was so fast was because the little blue dragon was the same as Yang Tian. It was lacking in energy. If it had enough energy, it would be able to level up quickly just like in the previous universe. Roar! The little blue dragon, who had become even more powerful, let out a deep roar. It was filled with battle intent. Yang Tian immediately jumped onto the little blue dragon's back. The little blue dragon carried Yang Tian and quickly flew above the beast horde. The man and dragon once again joined the battle of hunting exotic beasts. A few minutes later, Yang Tian encountered a massive Bian. This was a beast at peak returns. It was even more powerful than the one Yang Tian had slain before. Earlier, Yang Tian had used a special method to temporarily increase his battle prowess in order to cleave the young beast in two. But now he couldn't. This guy's speed was comparable to Lan Bao's, and his strength was even stronger than Lan Bao's. In less than a minute, Yang Tian's arm had been scratched open by the nightmare beast's claws. The little blue dragon, who had been eyeing them covetously, seized the opportunity and rushed forward. Boom! The little azure dragon, which had grown larger in its resting form, opened its mouth and spat out a stream of pale, golden dragon flames at the black nightmare beast. After reaching returnance, the little blue dragon could spit out dragon flames once more. Roar! The nightmare beast, enveloped by the golden dragon flames, let out a miserable cry. It charged out of the flames and slammed into a huge boulder. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The boulder that weighed several tons was smashed to smithereens. From the looks of it, its eyes had been burned, and it had lost its ability to see. The little azure dragon quickly rushed down, opened its mouth, and bit down on the beast's back. It directly lifted up the 1,000-pound beast and shook its head. Poof! A sound was heard. A large piece of the nightmare beast's back had been torn off by the little blue dragon. Blood splattered everywhere. This was far too savage. The nightmare beast, which had lost its spine, had lost its ability to fight. Yang Tian flashed forward and slashed the nightmare beast's head to end its pain. Following this, Yang Tian cut open the nightmare beast's chest and picked out a silvery white life crystal the size of a goose egg. Following this, Yang Tian took out a bag used to store miscellaneous items from his storage bracelet. He put the life crystal into the bag and tied it to his waist. Yang Tian naturally did not want to hand over the life crystal that he had obtained with great difficulty. However, he had no choice but to do so in this situation. After putting away the life crystal, the little blue dragon flew into the sky and continued to search for its next target. The exotic beasts that the little blue dragon was searching for were all at returnance. It was not difficult to defeat such exotic beasts. It could kill them in a few minutes and obtain the life crystal. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon stayed far away from the more powerful exotic beasts. A few hours later, a large number of powerful exotic beasts were slain. Another howl that seemed to belong to a beast king rang out in the distance. With this howl, the swarm of exotic beasts immediately dispersed and returned the way they had come. Very soon, they fled into the distant wilderness. The beast wave this time had finally come to an end. Seeing that there were no more exotic beasts in the surroundings, the little blue dragon turned back into a mini dragon and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. Yang Tian carried the 3 bags and made his way back to the clan. At this moment, all the returnance cultivators returned in 2s and 3s, aside from the cultivators from the illusion world, who continued to pursue the fleeing exotic beasts and increase their harvest. The hunt for powerful exotic beasts this time was not an easy matter. A large number of returnance cultivators had been devoured by the exotic beasts. Although the cultivators who returned were filled with joy from their harvest, they were unable to hide their exhaustion. You stop right there. As soon as Yang Tian passed through the gap in the first wall, a cold voice rang out from beside him. Yang Tian turned his head and saw a black-robed young man with a group of subordinates stop a cultivator who had just returned. The person who had been stopped was a skinny, white-robed, middle-aged man. He was a returnance cultivator. After fighting exotic beasts for so long, his white robes were covered in black blood. The black-robed young man was not even at returnance. Even though that was the case, the cultivators all feared the black-robed young man very much. They all avoided him when they saw him. So it's 16th Elder. The white-robed, middle-aged man smiled when he saw the black-robed young man. The smile on his face was extremely ugly. Elder was a form of address, just like Mr. on Earth and Sir in his original world. Judging from the white-robed, middle-aged man's attitude towards the black-robed young man, his status in the Hui clan was very high. What are you carrying in your hands? 16th Elder glanced at the two bulging bags on the white-robed, middle-aged man's waist and asked with a smile. These are life crystals. The white-robed, middle-aged man smiled awkwardly. Life crystals? 16th Elder paused and glanced at one of his subordinates. The subordinate immediately arrived before the white-robed, middle-aged man and took away one of the bags. The white-robed, middle-aged man did not do anything during this process. He just watched as the half of the life crystals he had risked his life for was taken away. After returning, he would have to hand over the other half, which was equivalent to a quarter of what he had obtained. It was a great loss. Chapter 640. After taking a leather pouch, 16 waved his hand at the middle-aged man in the white robe, asking him to leave. The middle-aged man in the white robe sighed helplessly and shook his head slightly. He turned around and walked towards the center of the clanland. After the monster horde subsided, the fifth wall and the few walls behind it were lowered. Seeing this, Yang Tian understood that he could not afford to offend 16. It was best to stay away from him. Although Yang Tian did not want to provoke 16th Elder, 16th Elder happened to see him at this moment. Yang Tian was very eye-catching as his clothes were messy and his body was covered in black scabs formed for blood. However, the pouch on his waist was red. He had obtained 3 huge red pouches full of life crystals. With the help of the little blue dragon, Yang Tian had obtained more life crystals. He had obtained at least 30 silver-white life crystals. Although they were the lowest level of silver-white life crystals, they were considered very rich for a returnance cultivator. You! Stop right there! 16 stopped Yang Tian, just like how he stopped the middle-aged man in the white robe earlier. Yang Tian glanced at 16th Duke from the corner of his eyes before he continued to walk forward. At that moment, 16 and the rest were about 50 meters away from Yang Tian. After the monster horde subsided, Karcha walked out to see if Yang Tian was still alive. At this moment, he happened to see this scene. Just as he was about to greet Yang Tian, he had no choice but to stop. Karcha had stayed in the clan land for a long time, so he knew that 16 was not to be trifled with. At that moment, he could not help but worry about Yang Tian. Although he had not known Yang Tian for long, Karcha knew that Yang Tian was very stubborn. He was a person who could be persuaded by reason, but not cowed by force. At that moment, Karcha was hoping that Yang Tian would give in. He pretended to ignore me. Go! When 16 saw that Yang Tian did not stop, he immediately ordered his subordinates. Although 16 elders were not returnance cultivators, there were 2 returnance cultivators among his subordinates. With an order, the 2 of them arrived 20 meters away from Yang Tian in a flash, blocking his path. To the cultivators who didn't greet each other, this was a safe distance. Any closer and it would be a declaration of war. Yang Tian had no choice but to stop. At this time, it was already too late to avoid trouble. Yang Tian, on the other hand, regretted stopping here for too long. Curiosity really killed the cat. After the 2 returnance cultivators stopped Yang Tian, the other subordinates surrounded Yang Tian. The 16 heads slowly made his way through the rubble from the collapsed wall. He arrived before the 2 returnance subordinates and stopped. Hey, what's your name? Why do you want to run as soon as you see me? The 16 heads asked Yang Tian proudly after stopping. Yang Tian glanced at his surroundings and saw many people looking at them from a distance away. Just like Yang Tian, they were here to enjoy the show. Yang Tian. Yang Tian reported his name and continued. It's because I obtained these life crystals with great difficulty. I don't want you to take advantage of me. Most of the 16 heads subordinates carried bags in their hands. It seemed like many of them had fallen for Yang Tian's trick before he arrived. Yang Tian was telling the truth. The 16 heads could not help but widen his eyes when he heard that. This was the first time he had heard someone say something so honest in front of him. Since, then leave behind one bag. No, 2 bags of life crystals and piss off. The 16 heads sneered after being stunned for a moment. Yang Tian shook his head. These are the fruits of my labor. I can't give them to you. Do you know? What you're doing is wrong. Even if you're the son of the Hui family leader, you shouldn't do that because it'll tarnish the family leader's reputation. If you're not the family leader's son, what you're doing is even more wrong because your father isn't the most powerful person in the family. What you're doing will bring trouble to your family. Shut up. Before Yang Tian could finish his sentence, the 16 heads raised his hand to stop Yang Tian from continuing. To the 16 heads, what Yang Tian said sounded like he was being lectured. Yang Tian shut his mouth. The 16 heads were still very young. He glared at Yang Tian coldly and was so angry that he was speechless. Nobody had ever lectured him like that since he was young. I'm Yang Tian, Yang Tian said coldly, but I don't know who you are. May I know who you are? The 16 heads is the 16th son of the Hui family's 3rd elder. His name is Hui Taichang. One of the 16 heads underlings said as soon as Yang Tian finished his sentence. After the underling reported the 16 heads' identity and name, the 16 heads snorted coldly with an arrogant expression. Yang Tian smiled. So, you're the 16th son of the 3rd elder. My apologies. No, there's nothing about you that can make others respect you. Those cultivators who left their life crystals weren't afraid of you. They just didn't want to offend your father. If your father wasn't the 3rd elder but a normal cultivator. After Yang Tian finished speaking, he walked to the side. One of the 16 heads, underlings, immediately went forward and stopped Yang Tian. Pung! Yang Tian raised his leg and kicked the underling into the air until he landed at least 10 meters away. After he landed on the ground, the underling clutched his stomach and cried out in pain. Kill him! The 2 of you kill him! Seeing this, the 16 heads became furious as he pointed at Yang Tian and roared. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 gusts of wind could be heard. The 2 underlings of the 16 heads moved and charged at Yang Tian with the whistling of the wind. They were going to fight again. The little blue dragon's eyes were filled with battle intent. It immediately flew into the air and transformed into a huge dragon. With the little blue dragon around, Yang Tian was not afraid of facing 2 returnance cultivators at the same time. After settling this matter and digesting the life crystals that he had obtained, Yang Tian would be able to upgrade to the illusion realm after settling down. Once he entered this realm, he would be at the pinnacle of the illusion realm. Whoosh! Seeing the 2 of them charging at him, Yang Tian's figure flashed. He swung his sword and slashed at one of them with a red wind blade. The other party was agile and dodged to the side before the sword aura even reached him. Hiss! At the same time, a black thread sliced at Yang Tian. The other cultivator attacked Yang Tian. The black thread was very strange. Not only was it fast, but when it flew, it was like a snake. It moved in a curved path, sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes left, and sometimes right. It was difficult to dodge. Yang Tian was just about to use his mind power to block the attack when he heard a boom above his head. A scorching aura surged toward him. It turned out that the little blue dragon had spat out a dragon flame. The black thread was burned by the dragon flame and lit up like a light bulb. It turned out to be a type of metal thread. Because the dragon flame was too hot, the heat was transmitted to the hand of the person using the thread. Feeling the scorching energy, the person attacking Yang Tian with the thread had no choice but to throw away the strange weapon. Stop! The other person was about to charge at Yang Tian when a powerful shout suddenly rang out. Before the voice had even finished, a middle-aged man in red robes with silver hair appeared to the side. When Hui Taichang's subordinates saw this person, they immediately stopped and dodged to the side. Then, they lowered their heads, not daring to look at the middle-aged man. Father! Hui Taichang called out to the middle-aged man with silver hair. The voice made Yang Tian's teeth ache. As it turned out, the middle-aged man with silver hair was the 3rd elder of the Hui clan. Chapter 641. Once you return, you're not allowed to come out until you've reached returnance. The third elder glanced at his son with a frown and said nonchalantly, "Ah, Hui," Taichung cried out in surprise. He said, "Father, I haven't done anything wrong. There's no need for this, right?" "Yeah." The third elder nodded. He looked at Hui Taichung and his gaze sharpened. "All right." Hui Taichung lowered his head helplessly. 16th elder, let's go. At this moment, one of Hui Taichung's close subordinates arrived before him and whispered into his ear. Actually, the people who feared the third elder the most were Hui Taichung's subordinates. Hui Taichung nodded. He looked at Yang Tian and sneered. "I'll remember you. Just you wait." With that, Hui Taichung left with his subordinates. Yang Tian squinted his eyes at Hui Taichung's threat. Yang Tian hated it when people threatened him right now. After Hui Taichung left, the third elder glanced at Yang Tian deeply. He said nothing and left in a flash as well. Perhaps this was only a small matter to the third elder. He had just happened to pass by. Now that the beast wave had just passed, there were many things he had to deal with. Cha could not help but let out a sigh of relief for Yang Tian after the third elder left. When the third elder had arrived, he had been worried for Yang Tian. It had to be mentioned that the elders possessed great authority in the clan. If the third elder used an excuse to kill Yang Tian, no one would say anything. The little blue dragon turned back into a mini dragon and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. Ka-cha quickly walked over. "Yang Tian, I was so worried before," Ka-cha said with lingering fear after arriving before Yang Tian. "Are the people of the three elders very bad?" Yang Tian asked. Facing Yang Tian's question, Ka-cha looked around and whispered to Yang Tian, "They don't look bad on the surface, but the things they do are 100 times worse than the bad guys. You should understand." Yang Tian nodded. Indeed, they had sacrificed so many ordinary humans just to obtain a large number of life crystals. If Yang Tian was in that position, he would never be able to do it. "Let's go. There are still many things to be done. You're a returnance cultivator now. The higher-ups will definitely give you an independent courtyard. Do you lack a housekeeper?" Ka-cha said to Yang Tian with a smile. Yang Tian smiled and said, "Don't worry. I won't leave you alone." Ka-cha chuckled as he was so happy. Although Ka-cha didn't have much talent in cultivation, he was very smart. He knew he couldn't do it, so he had to find a backer. This was not the first time Ka-cha treated a newcomer the same way he treated Yang Tian after so many years. However, those people didn't have Yang Tian's talent. At the beginning, they seemed to be very powerful, but then they slowly fell silent. Or when they succeeded in cultivation and rose to a higher position than Ka-cha, they forgot about Ka-cha. Ka-cha was very familiar with the internal affairs of the clan. He brought Yang Tian to the clan's management office and handed over half of his life crystals. With the help of the little blue dragon, Yang Tian obtained a total of 36 life crystals. After handing over half, there were still 18 left. Yang Tian saw a pile of silvery white life crystals that looked like a small hill in the management office. These lowest level life crystals were casually piled together as if they weren't valued. Besides the silver white life crystals, there were also black and gold life crystals. The black and gold life crystals were stored in silver white metal boxes. There weren't many of them. Different levels of life crystals would definitely have different colors. Without Ka-cha's explanation, Yang Tian could roughly determine the level of these life crystals from the energy waves they emitted. The silver white life crystals were the lowest level of origin level life crystals. Before coming to this world, the life crystal that Yang Tian obtained from killing the mutated beast was origin level. Perhaps it was because the world was different. The shape of the life crystal in the mutated beast body had changed. The life crystal that was one level higher than the silver white life crystal was black, which was the fantasy level life crystal. The next level was the gold life crystal, which was the enlightenment level life crystal. As for the higher level life crystals, Yang Tian didn't find any in the management office. Seeing the black and gold life crystals, the little blue dragon's eyes were filled with desire. However, it knew that if it didn't care about the consequences of snatching these life crystals, it would be in big trouble. In the end, the little blue dragon's rationality won over its desire to devour the life crystals. The dragon's saliva that flowed out made Yang Tian's shoulder wet. After handing over 18 life crystals, Yang Tian, who was heartbroken, put the rest of the life crystals into his storage bracelet. Fortunately, the 2 life crystals that the little blue dragon had swallowed were not included in the storage bracelet. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for the Hui family to keep an eye on every cultivator. Ka-cha, bring me to other places. After leaving the management office, Yang Tian said to Ka-cha with a smile. Ka-cha immediately nodded and said, "There are only a few places that people can visit. Let me bring you to the temple." Temple? Is there a temple in the family land? Yang Tian asked curiously. Ka-cha said, "Every family land has a temple. You'll know when you see it." About half an hour later, Yang Tian stood in front of a grand building under Ka-cha's guidance. The building wasn't tall, and its shape was similar to the Confucius temple that Yang Tian had seen in the cities on Earth. Although the building wasn't tall, it occupied a large area. In front of the temple, there were 2 strange human statues with wings, wearing loose robes and holding tridents. "What are these?" Yang Tian looked at the 2 statues and asked Ka-cha curiously. Ka-cha said, "These are the servants of the gods. I've never seen the divine servants of the gods. However, I heard that the patriarch of the Hui family had seen the divine servants in their true form." The beast tide had just passed, so the temple seemed very deserted. After Ka-cha finished speaking, he led Yang Tian past the 2 statues and up the stone steps to the main entrance. There were 2 rows of guards on both sides of the main entrance. These guards were very strong and wore gorgeous golden armor. Although they looked mighty and domineering, it was only for show because they weren't cultivators. Ka-cha didn't pay attention to these guards and led Yang Tian through the wide temple gate. "Get out!" Just as he stepped over the high threshold, a cold shout came from the side. Yang Tian turned his head and saw a middle-aged man wearing a white robe, holding a carving knife and carving a statue. Seeing the statue, Yang Tian opened his eyes wide, because this unfinished statue was unexpectedly Qin Fei's appearance when she left. "What's going on?" A big question mark appeared in Yang Tian's mind. Ka-cha didn't see Yang Tian's appearance. At this time, he smiled at the middle-aged man and said, "We just going to take a look? We'll leave once we're done." The middle-aged man frowned. "You're too dirty. Wash up and then come back." Only then did Yang Tian react. Indeed, he was too dirty and had a strange smell on his body. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, he felt uncomfortable all over and wanted to take a bath. Ka-cha wasn't much better than Yang Tian. P.S. More updates tomorrow. The updates will be faster. Chapter 642. Although the white-robed, middle-aged man didn't look like a cultivator, they couldn't feel the slightest bit of energy fluctuation from his body. Yang Tian and Ka-cha looked at each other and could only leave the temple. Ka-cha took Yang Tian to a bathhouse not far from the temple. They washed themselves from head to toe and changed into clean clothes before coming out of the bathhouse. 2 people and a dragon washed themselves clean before entering the temple. What surprised Yang Tian was that the white-robed middle-aged man they saw before had already finished carving the statue. The completed statue was twice the size of a real person and looked exactly the same as Qin Fei. There was a red dot between the eyebrows. The statue was in a standing posture, holding a staff in its right hand and raising its left hand to form an orchid shape. A round ball was floating above the left hand, emitting waves of rune energy fluctuation. In addition to this statue, there were dozens of other statues in the temple. Each of them was twice the size of a real person and looked extremely lifelike. However, none of the statues were as lifelike as the one depicting Qin Fei. Yang Tian looked at this statue and was stunned for a long time. He felt that the real Qin Fei was standing in front of him. Thinking back to the meeting with Qin Fei in the Divine Palace, it felt like it had happened yesterday. The white-robed, middle-aged man looked at the statue with somewhat blurred eyes. When Yang Tian and Ka Cha arrived behind him, he didn't seem to notice. Ka Cha also opened his eyes wide and looked at the statue. For a moment, he was also immersed in it. Cough, cough. Yang Tian was the first to wake up. He deliberately coughed twice. The white-robed middle-aged man and Ka Cha woke up from their daze. Perfect. It's really perfect. Ha ha ha. The white-robed middle-aged man said and laughed loudly. Yang Tian frowned. The white-robed middle-aged man laughed for a long time. After he stopped, he said, "In this life, I can't carve such a good work again. I have decided to seal the knife." After saying this, a snap sound was heard. The white-robed middle-aged man broke the carving knife in his hand. After destroying the knife, the white-robed middle-aged man turned around and walked out of the temple. Yang Tian immediately flashed and blocked the white-robed middle-aged man's path. Being blocked by Yang Tian, the white-robed middle-aged man frowned and said indifferently, "What do you want?" Yang Tian said with a smile, "Great master, I just have a few questions to ask you." "Ask." Seeing that Yang Tian didn't have any hostility, the white-robed middle-aged man said indifferently. Yang Tian said, "I would like to ask, who is this statue that you just sculpted?" The white-robed middle-aged man said, "The statues placed in the temple depiction of gods. This deity is a newly ascended deity." "Then where is she?" Yang Tian asked nervously. "After coming to this world, worlds is a god two's back." The white-robed middle-aged man said, "Tian es to God. Kata head to has s to." The white-robed middle-aged man laughed. "Of course not." After saying that, seeing the doubtful look in Yang Tian's eyes, the white-robed middle-aged man said, "But I've seen her. She's the most beautiful god I've ever seen. Although I only saw her once, she was deeply imprinted in my mind." After saying that, the white-robed middle-aged man's eyes became confused again, as if he was recalling the situation back then. Yang Tian asked again, "Then, how do I get to that continent?" The white-robed middle-aged man came back to his senses and sized up Yang Tian. He said in a disdainful tone, "With just you, don't even think about it. To get to that continent, you'll have to cross the boundless sea of stars. There are countless powerful demon beasts in the sea of stars. Apart from gods, no one can cross it. There's no teleportation array between this continent and that continent." After saying that, the white-robed middle-aged man didn't want to talk nonsense with Yang Tian anymore. His body turned into a white shadow and disappeared in a flash. Ka Cha saw this and cried out in surprise. He didn't expect that this white-robed middle-aged man, who looked like an ordinary human, was actually a very powerful cultivator. Yang Tian didn't find it strange. This was completely within his expectations. After being stunned for a moment, Yang Tian gritted his teeth and said, "Xiaolong, we must cross that sea of stars." The little blue dragon immediately nodded. Its eyes were also filled with determination. After receiving some news about Qin Fei, Yang Tian seemed to be calm. But in fact, he was even more worried for Qin Fei. The god that descended on Qin Fei's body didn't seem to have left Qin Fei's body. Yang Tian wasn't interested in the other statues in the temple and immediately left the temple. "Yang Tian, what's wrong?" After leaving the temple and walking for a while, Ka Cha saw that something was wrong with Yang Tian and quickly asked. Yang Tian smiled and shook his head. "Nothing." If Yang Tian didn't want to say, Ka Cha didn't ask. However, he saw that Yang Tian was so sensitive to the statue and guessed that Yang Tian had some relationship with that god. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Ka Cha rejected it. Yang Tian was just an ordinary cultivator. How could he have any relationship with a god? Yang Tian was walking aimlessly when suddenly, He Xianwen appeared in front of Yang Tian again. After seeing Yang Tian, He Xianwen walked straight to Yang Tian. Yang Tian immediately went to greet him. Before Yang Tian could speak, He Xianwen smiled and asked, "Yang Tian, are you interested in working at the Rune Department? What kind of place is the Rune Department?" Yang Tian asked. He Xianwen said, It's the place where the Hui race manages the runes and makes rune arrays and rune mechanisms. I think you're very suitable. Let me tell you, the treatment in the rune department is very good, and it's very easy. The rune department is directly responsible to the chief. If your rune skills are high, you'll definitely be valued by the chief. Your future will be limitless. When He Xianwen said this, Yang Tian could guess what kind of organization the rune department was. It was a place that dealt with runes all day long. Now that the clan's land was in ruins, there would be a lot of work to do. However, after this period of work, it would be very easy. After thinking for a while, Yang Tian didn't agree or refuse. Instead, he asked He Xianwen, "Is there a better place than the rune department?" Don't misunderstand. I mean, it can help my cultivation level improve faster. When Yang Tian said this, He Xianwen frowned. He suddenly felt that Yang Tian was a little arrogant. He had his eyes on Yang Tian's talent in runes. Increase your cultivation level as fast as possible. There's a place that I'm not sure if you're up for it. When He Xianwen said this, his tone became a little cold. Please go ahead, Yang Tian said with a smile. He Xianwen said, the hunting department that specializes in eliminating exotic beasts. Although the beast tide has passed, there are still many powerful exotic beasts outside the clan's land that pose a threat. This requires the hunting department to eliminate them. Other than this, the higher-ups often give the hunting department special missions. Other than hunting exotic beasts, they also have to deal with other cultivators. They even have to go to dangerous places to search for secrets. The people of the hunting department often have to go to very far places, such as the Sand region and the Frost region outside the Yen region. Although the cultivators of the hunting department receive great rewards, they are always in danger. For so many years, other than the higher-ups of the fierce hunting department, very few people have been able to escape unscathed. After saying this, He Xianwen looked at Yang Tian with a cold smile and said, "Do you want to go to such a place?" When He Xianwen finished speaking, Yang Tian said, "You said it's dangerous, but what about the benefits? I don't think I need to join the hunting department. I can hunt exotic beasts or explore secret areas by myself, right?" When Yang Tian said this, He Xianwen snorted coldly and said, "If you don't have your family to provide you with relevant information, you are a blind man in this world. Benefits. Every mission has great rewards. It's up to you whether you dare to accept it or not." Yang Tian thought for a while and said resolutely, "Fine, I'll go to the hunting department." Yang Tian felt that this way of cultivation was the most suitable for him. Ever since he became an enhancer, he had always been like this. Going to the rune department was equivalent to retiring. Chapter 643. Since you've already decided, I won't force you. The beast tide has just passed, and the hunting division hasn't recruited anyone yet. You can go to the rune division to help out. What do you think? He Xianwen asked after a moment of silence. If Yang Tian were to refuse again, then he would be ignorant of the situation. Without any hesitation, he nodded his head and agreed. He Xianwen smiled. Come with me. The clan grounds have been severely damaged, and many of the rune mechanisms can't be used anymore. They have to be redesigned and repaired. After every beast tide, the rune masters are the busiest, He Xianwen said as he walked. Yang Tian listened and nodded from time to time. Going to the rune division for a period of time wasn't a permanent job. Helping out a little was nothing. He Xianwen didn't head toward the center of the clan grounds. Instead, he headed toward the periphery. Soon, they walked past the area where the fifth protective wall had been. The area beyond the fifth protective wall was the most severely damaged area. After arriving at this area, all he could see was a miserable scene. The injured people were basically missing an arm or a leg. There were also some who were on the verge of death. Yang Tian could only hear the mournful cries of the relatives of the deceased and the wails of the injured. Almost all of them were ordinary humans. Seeing this, Yang Tian's brows furrowed even tighter. He Xianwen turned to look at Yang Tian. He knew what Yang Tian was thinking and said, "Don't think that the Hui clan doesn't care about them. They can't take care of them at all. There's simply too many of them. A long time ago, some of the clans that came to this wilderness to build their clan grounds mobilized their cultivators when the beast tide arrived. They moved the ordinary humans to the center of the clan grounds. Guess what happened? He Xianwen stopped and turned to look at Yang Tian after he finished speaking. Yang Tian shook his head. He Xianwen said, "The result was that both the cultivators and the ordinary humans were all killed. Every beast tide is a battle between humans and the mutated beasts. There's a lot of strategy involved. If the cultivators were to blend in with the ordinary humans, they would not be able to unleash their strongest combat power because they were afraid of accidentally injuring others. If the ordinary humans were to gather at the center of the clan grounds while the cultivators were to defend the perimeter, the situation would be even worse. That's because cultivators are all selfish. I don't have to explain in detail. You should be able to understand." He Xianwen was most likely telling the truth, but Yang Tian could not accept it. If he were to build his clan's land, he would never allow ordinary humans to serve as cannon fodder. He would build the clan's land so that even high-level beasts couldn't invade it. If he couldn't do that, he wouldn't have built such a city-like building complex to gather a large number of people and wait for the beast horde to attack. The repair work of the Hui family had already begun. At the first protective wall, a large number of ordinary humans who had survived were gathered together to repair the protective wall. General 1, long time no see. A red-robed old man saw He Xianwen and walked over. He smiled and greeted He Xianwen. "Lord Tai Xian, the rune department is still short of manpower, right? I brought you someone." He Xianwen pointed at Yang Tian and introduced him to the black-robed old man. The red-robed old man had long silver hair and looked to be about 60 years old. The energy waves emitted from his body weren't any weaker than He Xianwen's. The strange program informed Yang Tian that this old man had a rune treasure on him. In Yang Tian's original universe, rune treasures were extremely rare. However, in this world, they were very common tools. During the battle with the beast horde, Yang Tian had seen many cultivators using rune treasures to attack the beasts. However, the rune treasures that Yang Tian had seen weren't very powerful. They were only slightly stronger than ordinary weapons. While Yang Tian was sizing up the red-robed old man, the red-robed old man was naturally sizing up Yang Tian as well. After carefully sizing up Yang Tian and the little blue dragon, the red-robed old man smiled and turned to He Xianwen. "Don't tell me you want me to take him as a disciple." He Xianwen shook his head. "No, I saw that he had some talent in runes and called him over to help you. After that, he will go to the hunting department." The red-robed old man nodded. "I'm short of manpower. Thank you." He Xianwen then said to Yang Tian, "This is one of the managers of the rune department, Zhang Taixian." "Lord Taixian, hello. My name is Yang Tian." Yang Tian said with a smile. The red-robed old man didn't pay much attention to Yang Tian. After Yang Tian finished speaking, Zhang Taixian pulled He Xianwen to the side and talked for a few minutes. Yang Tian heard the two of them talking about their harvest this time, how much louse medicine they could exchange for, and so on. Louse medicine. This name came from louse crystals. It was a kind of pill that could be consumed directly to replenish energy and be used for cultivation. Louse crystals could only be refined into pure energy in a special way. Life crystals weren't very effective for cultivators to consume directly. These two things, along with some other herbs, would be made into louse medicine. This way, the energy could be maximized and not wasted. Louse medicine was a necessity for cultivators in this world. Yang Tian had heard of louse medicine from Karcha before. However, for someone of Karcha's status, it was like a mortal hearing about immortal pills. He had only heard of it, but had never seen it before. "Yang Tian, I think that the hunting department should go to the hunting department. It's best if you stay in the runes department and join the hunting division because it's too dangerous." Karcha glanced at He Xianwen and Zhang Taixian and whispered to Yang Tian. Yang Tian just shook his head and didn't say anything. Since he had made a decision, how could he change it so easily? Yang Tian had made this decision after some consideration, not because he was hot-headed. He Xian and Zhang Taixian finished their conversation, nodded to Yang Tian, and turned to leave. Zhang Taixian came to Yang Tian and asked, "What level of talisman master are you?" "What level of talisman master?" Yang Tian didn't know how to answer this question. He could only shake his head. "It seems that you don't know much about runes," Zhang Taixian said as he took out a folded drawing from his storage bracelet and handed it to Yang Tian. "You should know how to do it. This is a simplified design of the clan's defensive formation. I'll mark some data on it. Make a purchase form according to the data on it. Can you do this?" Yang Tian took the design and nodded. Seeing Yang Tian take the drawing, Zhang Taixian turned around and led a group of men to patrol around the first broken wall, leaving Yang Tian behind. Obviously, Zhang Taixian was sending Yang Tian away because Yang Tian was too young. He didn't look like a person with attainments in talisman Taoism. At most, he could read some simple runes. The youngest of Zhang Taishuan's men was middle-aged, and there were even some who looked older than Zhang Taixian. In the final analysis, runes were a technical thing. Without years of study, one could not be proficient in it. Yang Tian was not proficient in runes, but Yang Tian had a strange program. After Zhang Taixian left with a group of people, Yang Tian unfolded the drawing. The drawing was yellow and white, made of special materials. It was very thin and very large when unfolded. After finding an open space, Yang Tian fully unfolded the drawing with the help of the little blue dragon and Ka-Cha. It was a large drawing with a square side of 10 meters. Although the drawing was large, the lines on it were very thin and numerous. There are also many tiny runes. Yang Tian felt a headache and his eyes were sore. He couldn't understand it at all. Fortunately, he had the strange program. The strange program simulated the contents of the drawing in Yang Tian's mind, forming a very intuitive three-dimensional drawing. "Manager, what you gave to that person is the main defense drawing, right? He's just a young boy. How can he understand it? You're making things difficult for him, aren't you?" After walking for some distance, one of Zhang Taishuan's men said with a smile. Zhang Taixian nodded. "I want to make things difficult for him and make him disappear on his own. You can't enter the rune division by connections." As soon as he finished, Zhang Taishuan's men nodded repeatedly. It seemed that Zhang Taixian regarded Yang Tian as a backdoor entrant. He couldn't refuse He Xian General directly, so he had to trouble Yang Tian. Chapter 644. The more Yang Tian looked at it, the clearer the 3D image in his mind became. The lines on the diagram were very messy and densely packed. If one wasn't the person who drew the diagram, it would be very difficult to understand what these lines represented. The strange program was different. It was essentially an intelligent program with super computing power. Plus, it was constructed from runes, so this kind of diagram wasn't difficult for it at all. It could even be said to be simple. Truly amazing. Yang Tian sighed as he looked at the 3D image in his mind. In terms of manpower, the rune array system covering the clan land was simply exquisite to the extreme, taking care of every aspect. At least from Yang Tian's point of view, that was the case. But it was different for the strange program. Yang Tian had just exclaimed in his mind when the program said, "In fact, it's very bad. At least 60% of the energy is wasted, and the power of the rune array is only 50% of the ideal state." The strange program listed a large number of shortcomings in Yang Tian's mind. After the program finished, Yang Tian couldn't help but smile and ask, "If you were to design it, these problems could be avoided, right?" The program said, "Of course." While Yang Tian was talking to the strange program, he walked around the blueprint with a serious expression on his face. Karcha couldn't understand the diagram, so he curiously stared at Yang Tian's face, wanting to see something from Yang Tian's face. He naturally hoped that Yang Tian could complete Purple Sun Tai Xian's mission and let Yang Tian receive the attention of the Rune Division. This was not only beneficial to Yang Tian, but also to him, because as long as Yang Tian's status rose, he would be able to take care of him. Katja could see that Yang Tian was a person who placed great importance on friendship. When Yang Tian withdrew his gaze from the diagram, Karcha hurriedly asked, "How is it?" Yang Tian smiled and said, "No problem. According to the diagram's information, the damage situation, and the list of materials needed to repair the rune array, the strange program had already calculated. It really wasn't difficult for the program. However, in order to perfect this kind of talisman array, the strange program needed more talisman information. The more rune information the strange program obtained, the more powerful it would become. This was also what the strange program hoped for." Yang Tian decided that he had to impress Ang Taixian in order to complete the strange program and strengthen the clan's land so that fewer people would die in the next beast tide. "Do you have a pen and paper?" Yang Tian raised his head and asked Karcha after a moment of silence. Karcha nodded and immediately took out a palm-sized notebook and a pen from his storage ring. Yang Tian looked at the pen and paper and felt very satisfied. Next, the strange program narrated in his mind, and Yang Tian wrote it down. At this moment, Yang Tian thought of the Dead by song. He thought that it would be great if the old man didn't die. He could think of a way to get him out of the mine. There were a lot of materials needed to build a rune array. Yang Tian had never heard of many of the materials listed by the strange program. After spending more than half an hour, Yang Tian finally finished writing. There were more than 10 pages in the small notebook. In order not to make any mistakes, Yang Tian looked through the pages one by one. This process was actually the strange program checking for Yang Tian. The result was that there was no problem. Yang Tian was very rigorous in learning things. Of course, he wouldn't make a mistake. After closing the notebook and folding the blueprint, Yang Tian took these two things and walked in the direction Zhang Taixian left. The clan's land was very large. At this time, hundreds of thousands of people were participating in the repair work. It was not easy to find a small group of people. Karcha helped Yang Tian ask along the way and finally found Zhang Taishuan's group. Zhang Taixian had just given an order to one of his subordinates when he saw Yang Tian walking towards him. Seeing Yang Tian's arrival, Zhang Taixian laughed. In his eyes, there was a trace of disdain. In his opinion, Yang Tian must have come to return the blueprint because he couldn't understand it. If that was the case, he could send Yang Tian away with a few words. There would be one less trouble. Generally, those who did technical work hated people with connections. "How is it? Is it done?" Zhang Taixian asked with a smile as he looked at Yang Tian, who was getting closer and closer. Yang Tian handed the folded blueprint to Zhang Taixian and said with a smile, "It's done. This is the list." Zhang Taixian had just taken the blueprint when he saw Yang Tian hand over a small notebook. There was a look of surprise in his eyes. With a puzzled expression, Zhang Taixian flipped through the things Yang Tian had written page by page. In fact, Zhang Taixian wouldn't do this kind of statistical work. It was all done by his subordinates. He only looked at the data that he had just seen. It was the list of the most important materials reported by his subordinates. As he read, Zhang Taixian frowned. He found that the quantity of several materials was at least 15% different from the quantity reported by his subordinates. Zhang Taixian didn't doubt the abilities of his subordinates. After seeing the data, he laughed and said, "You must have calculated it wrong. For example, there should be 1,251 carts of this kind of universe bluestone used to draw energy lines. You actually calculated more than 200 carts. Because the quantity required was extremely large, the collection of materials was calculated in units, such as carts. When the strange program calculated, it took all the factors into consideration, including the places where the previous rune arrays had to be changed. The group of people in the rune division hadn't realized this problem yet. They would only discover it when the repair work was completed, but by then it would be too late. Much of the early work would be in vain, and they would have to start all over again. Yang Tian pondered for a moment, thinking about how to bring up the matter tactfully. Then he heard an old man behind Yang Taixian sneer and say, "More than 200 carts? Who did you learn arithmetic from? Do you know how much manpower and material resources would be wasted with more than 200 carts?" Yang Tian smiled and said, "I know that more than 200 carts have been calculated, And that's not the only type. In addition to the universe blue stone, there are also blue crystals, darkening stone, and so on. Zhang Taixian heard something strange from Yang Tian's words and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Since you already know, why did you still report more?" Those who were skilled in technology were extremely sensitive to such things. Yang Tian said, "Because I saw the design drawings and the modification plan depicted on the drawings. In such a short time, the Rune Division calculated the losses and knew what needed to be repaired. It's really amazing. You must know that the amount of work on the clan's land is really huge." After Yang Tian finished speaking, not only Zhang Taixian, but also Zhang Taishuan's subordinates looked proud. Everyone wanted to hear nice words. After saying nice words, Yang Tian continued, "You are all busy with your daily affairs. You may not have considered that some of the rune arrays that were not damaged by the exotic beasts need to be replaced. For example, the universe blue stone has been deformed in the cold wind and high temperature over the past few years." Before Yang Tian finished speaking, Zhang Taixian had already frowned. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of this problem before. However, the task assigned to him by the higher-ups had a time limit. If what Yang Tian said was true, then some of the project would definitely have to be redone. That would make the matter even more serious. While Zhang Taixian was still thinking, he heard Yang Tian say, "There's another big problem. This rune array system is not perfect. It can't make full use of energy." "Shut up." Before Yang Tian could finish speaking, the old man who had mocked Yang Tian just now shouted coldly. What Yang Tian had said was equivalent to saying that the rune array system they had designed was not good enough. Yang Tian stopped talking. He just shrugged and looked at Zhang Taixian, waiting for the old man's reaction. Chapter 645. Zhang Taixian was silent for a moment, then looked at Yang Tian with a frown and said, "Yang Tian, you have to take responsibility for what you said. If you can't come up with a better plan than this rune system, you will become the enemy of the entire runes department, and the consequences will be very serious. If you take back what you just said and apologize to everyone, there is still a possibility of saving the situation. We old guys won't bicker with a young man like you." After Zhang Taixian finished speaking, the group of people surrounded Yang Tian and Karst. The little blue dragon on Yang Tian's shoulder looked coldly at the people around him, ready to fight. But Yang Tian laughed. He glanced at the subordinates of Zhang Taixian who surrounded him and said, "You can't let others say that the thing you designed is not good." "Good," Zhang Taixian said with a gloomy face, and said to Yang Tian, "Then come with us to the runes department. If you can't come up with a better design." "Okay." Before Zhang Taixian finished speaking, Yang Tian simply agreed. Zhang Taixian nodded, turned, and walked quickly toward the center of the clan land. Yang Tian immediately followed. While walking, Zhang Taishuan's men kept Yang Tian in the middle, as if they were afraid that he would run away. In fact, Yang Tian didn't want to make things so tense, but he found that this group of technical people always had blind confidence in their own works. In fact, Yang Tian was the same. He was also very confident in the ability of the Strange program. He believed that human rune masters couldn't compare with the Strange program in terms of computing ability. This didn't mean that the human brain couldn't compare with the Strange program. In fact, in most cases, the Strange program couldn't compare with the human brain. For example, imagination, logical thinking, and so on. In these aspects, the Strange program had said that it was far inferior to humans. Zhang Taixian walked very quickly. More than 10 minutes later, he brought Yang Tian to the gate of the rune department, which occupied a very large area in the center of the clan land. The runes department did not look conspicuous. There was a tablet at the entrance that was engraved with runes. Unlike other places, there would be guards at the gate. The door of the runes department was wide open, as if it was unguarded. In fact, the runes department was shrouded in layers of rune array energy. If one did not have a key, they would not be able to enter and leave at will. Zhang Taixian directly walked through the door. In the process, waves of rune energy fluctuations were generated. The Strange program simulated this scenario for Yang Tian. In Yang Tian's mind, when Zhang Taixian walked through the gate of the runes department, it was as if he had broken into still water, producing circles of energy ripples. Zhang Taixian entered the gate of the runes department, but Yang Tian stopped in front of the tablet. Because the group walked too fast, Karst was somewhat out of breath. Zhang Taishuan's group of subordinates still surrounded Yang Tian, looking at Yang Tian with a gloomy face. It seemed that if Yang Tian could not come up with a better rune array system design, they would probably cut Yang Tian into pieces to vent their anger. After Zhang Taixian entered the gate of the runes department, he did not come out for a long time. The beast tide had just passed, and the runes department was a relatively busy place. From time to time, there were people going in and out. Whether they were going in or out, they would all curiously look at Yang Tian and his group. Yang Tian was very patient, waiting quietly with his arms crossed. About 10 minutes later, Zhang Taixian came out of the gate and threw 2 black tokens to Yang Tian and Karst. This was the pass. With this thing, one could enter and leave the runes department at will. After Karst took the token, he was very happy. He thought he would be rejected at the door. Most likely, Zhang Taixian saw Karst as Yang Tian's follower. Cultivators needed to concentrate on their cultivation and did not pay much attention to the trivial matters of life. Therefore, it was normal for them to keep some people around to help them deal with these matters. After you go in, watch first and don't talk too much. Zhang Taixian reminded Yang Tian, then turned and walked through the gate. Yang Tian looked at the black token in his hand, smiled slightly, and stepped through the gate of the runes department. After crossing the high threshold, the first thing that entered Yang Tian's eyes was a large bluestone screen wall. This screen wall was very unique to the runes department. There were no exotic beasts carved on it, nor were there any beautiful patterns. Instead, it was carved with runes just like the tablets outside. After bypassing the screen wall, there was another gate. As they walked forward, one of Zhang Taishuan's subordinates gave Yang Tian a look, indicating that Yang Tian should follow him. Yang Tian nodded. Further ahead, there was a very large courtyard. There were flowers and plants planted inside, and there was also a small pond. The courtyard was very quiet. There were people going in and out of the rooms all around. Everyone seemed to be moving lightly, for fear of making heavy footsteps. Yang Tian was led along one side of the corridor, and then into an inconspicuous room on the left. So far, Yang Tian's impression of the runes department was that it was like the courtyard of a rich family, and looked extremely ordinary. The room was very large, full of bookshelves, and there was a square model of the clan land in the middle. After Yang Tian entered the room, he saw Zhang Taixian standing next to the model, frowning tightly, as if he had encountered something difficult. "Manager, what's wrong?" Before Yang Tian could ask, one of Zhang Taishuan's subordinates asked. Looking at the expression on Zhang Taishuan's face, he knew that it was not because of Yang Tian. Zhang Taixian said, "The higher-ups suddenly changed their mind and suppressed the material procurement plan we submitted." "Why?" As soon as Zhang Taixian finished speaking, someone asked. "It's very simple," Zhang Taixian said, "because they want to rebuild a new clan land right under here." "Good idea." As soon as Zhang Taixian finished speaking, Yang Tian said, "Moving underground, not only is it hidden, but it's also safe." "Humph." As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, Zhang Taixian snorted coldly and said, "It's easy to say, but extremely difficult to do. Because although the surface of this place is dry, the soil and stones are extremely wet 100 meters underground. It's extremely difficult to build, and it's costly. This kind of plan was mentioned a few hundred years ago." Next, Zhang Taixian complained. It was nothing more than saying that the higher-ups were amateurs who only knew how to let their imaginations run wild. In the face of Zhang Taishuan's complaints, the group just kept silent. "Actually, these can be achieved." After Zhang Taixian finished speaking, Yang Tian said with a smile, "Not only underground, but also in the sky." Zhang Taixian heard Yang Tian's words and said disdainfully, "It's easy to say, but it's a complicated and huge job to design." Even if everyone in the Rune Division doesn't eat, drink, or sleep, it will take several years to come up with a preliminary design plan. Unless it's a new design by the seniors in the Cloud Domain Divine Hall, then in a short time. At this point, Zhang Taixian suddenly stopped talking. He felt that it was a waste of saliva to tell Yang Tian all this. "Give me 10 days, and I'll give you the design plan," Yang Tian said suddenly. "However, I want corresponding benefits." "What benefits?" As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, a woman's voice was heard from the door behind him. This voice was extremely familiar to Yang Tian. Yang Tian turned his head to look, and sure enough, the person in front of him was the woman in black that he had met at the mine. At that time, the woman had been wearing a tight-fitting black cheongsam. Now, she was wearing a white dress, which made her look more innocent. "Greetings, Auntie." While Yang Tian was in a daze, Zhang Taixian and his subordinates hurriedly bowed to the beautiful woman. Chapter 646. Facing everyone's greetings, the beautiful woman only nodded her head slightly and walked into the house. She came to the model of the clan land and looked at it. She then turned her head and stared at Yang Tian. "You said earlier that you could design a large city that is built underground or even floating in the sky." "Yes." Yang Tian nodded. "What do you want in return?" The beautiful woman asked again. This was the second time the woman had asked Yang Tian this question. Seeing how respectful Zhang Taixian and the others were to this beautiful woman, it was obvious that she was an upper echelon of the Hui family. As soon as the woman's voice fell, Zhang Taixian said, "Auntie, don't listen to his nonsense." Hundreds of years ago, the construction of an underground city had been demonstrated several times. The degree of complexity is unimaginable. It can only be completed if the talisman masters of the Cloud Domain Divine Temple personally designed it. Building it in the sky is even more impossible. After Zhang Taixian said this, the beautiful woman looked at Yang Tian and said, "You haven't answered me." Yang Tian had already thought of the benefits. He smiled and said, "I want the Hui family's cultivation technique, which is the full set of cultivation techniques from the basic to the immortal realm." Yang Tian made this request because he knew that his cultivation method was different from most people. If he received the full set of cultivation techniques, he would most likely not cultivate it, but use it as a reference. When Yang Tian said this, the beautiful woman shook her head. "I can't promise you this. This is because I can only provide you with the cultivation techniques from the basic to the destiny realm. This is because my Hui family is a third-grade family in the entire continent. Our family's cultivation techniques can at most allow one to cultivate to the destiny enlightenment realm." "What's a third-class family?" Yang Tian asked curiously. "Hee, you don't even know this." The moment Yang Tian finished speaking, a young girl appeared outside the door and said with a smile. Yang Tian looked at this young girl and felt that she looked familiar. He thought carefully and recalled that this woman, who was called Auntie, had been accompanied by a young man. So she was a woman dressed as a man. This girl was delicate and cute, with big eyes. After returning to her female disguise, she looked like a beautiful girl who had walked out of a cartoon world. Seeing this young girl, Zhang Taixian and the others bowed again and called out, "Greetings, Lil Miss." Auntie and Lil Miss were most likely sisters, but their figures were completely different. They were most likely not born from the same mother. Just as Yang Tian was letting his imagination run wild, the girl quickly walked in front of Yang Tian and reached out her hand towards the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon didn't move. It was very smart and knew that this cute girl was just curious about it and didn't have any hostility. Even so, it wouldn't let the girl touch it, so it jumped onto Yang Tian's head. Yang Tian was already 9 meters tall, and this delicate girl was less than 7 meters tall. Naturally, she couldn't reach the little blue dragon unless she jumped up. Seeing that the little blue dragon didn't want to get close to her, the girl snorted and stomped her foot. She said to Yang Tian, "A third-class family has a cultivation technique that allows one to cultivate to the destiny realm. A second-class family has a cultivation technique that allows one to cultivate to the hunter transformation realm. A first-class family has a cultivation technique that allows one to cultivate to the soul travel realm. In the entire Yin domain, there are no first or second-class families. After the girl finished speaking, she returned to the side of the ante. All right, a cultivation technique that allows one to cultivate to the destiny realm is also fine, Yang Tian said with a helpless tone. All right. After Yang Tian finished speaking, the ante nodded. However, she immediately added, if you can't complete it, I guarantee that you will die. You said the time limit yourself, 10 days. This sentence exposed the woman's cold and aloof nature. Auntie, I'll help you look after him. How about it? The moment the auntie finished speaking, the girl said with a smile. After the girl finished speaking, she looked at the auntie expectantly. The auntie nodded and then said to Zhang Taixian and the others, in order to make it easier for him to work, Mr. Taixian, please assist him. Yes. Although Zhang Taixian was extremely unwilling, he still responded. After taking another look at Yang Tian, the auntie left Zhang Taishuan's office with the girl. You begin. You only have 10 days. After the beautiful auntie left, Zhang Taixian said to Yang Tian, the restoration plan that the Rune Division had formulated when the Beast Tide had started had been shelved just like that. A lot of effort had been wasted, and this made Zhang Taixian very uncomfortable. In the Rune Division, there were many other managers besides Zhang Taixian. These people's feelings were probably the same as Zhang Taishuan's. Yang Tian understood that the woman called Annie had agreed to let him design because regardless of whether Yang Tian succeeded or failed, the Hui clan would not lose anything. However, if Yang Tian failed, he would have to pay for it with his life. She had asked Zhang Taixian and the others to assist Yang Tian, but in fact, it was a kind of surveillance to prevent Yang Tian from running away if he failed. Yang Tian did not know if this woman still remembered that he was the person at the mine. Everyone, please help me move all the rune books over. I want to read them one by one. After Zhang Taixian finished speaking, Yang Tian stopped thinking and smiled at everyone. Don't tell me you can't even recognize all the runes. Zhang Taixian asked as he shot a look at his subordinates. Yang Tian smiled. Could it be that you have memorized all the runes? This, Zhang Taixian did not know how to answer. Memorize all the runes? Perhaps even the talisman masters of the Cloud Region Shrine could not do that. The reason the plan to build the clan's land underground was complicated was that there were many types of runes used. Almost all the talisman masters only had some attainments in a single field. Looking at Yang Tian's confident look, Zhang Taixian did not think that Yang Tian could succeed, because that was simply impossible. Soon, Zhang Taishuan's subordinates moved the books that Yang Tian needed over and piled them on a large table. Yang Tian sat down at the table and picked up a book at random to read. Zhang Taixian waved to his subordinates and asked them to leave. Karchen knew that it was not appropriate for him to stay there. After Zhang Taishuan's subordinates left, he said goodbye to Yang Tian and also left, closing the door on his way out. Only Yang Tian, Zhang Taixian, and the little blue dragon were left in the room. Zhang Taixian took out a drink from his storage bracelet and sat opposite Yang Tian, sipping his drink while looking at Yang Tian. Since the ant had ordered, he could not let Yang Tian run away. Yang Tian flipped through a few pages and felt a headache coming on when he saw the densely packed runes on them. In order to divert his attention, Yang Tian looked up at Zhang Taixian and then lowered his head. While flipping through the book, he asked, Lord Taixian, may I ask, who is the person you just called Ant? Yang Tian flipped through the pages very quickly. In the blink of an eye, he turned to the next page, which did not look like he was reading a book at all. Yang Tian's behavior made Zhang Taixian feel that Yang Tian was deliberately stalling for time. Of course, he did not understand that the strange program was recording the runes of this world through Yang Tian's vision. Compared to Yang Tian's previous universe world, the runes of this world were more complete in terms of both types and number. Moreover, the cultivators of this world were more systematic in terms of the study of runes, both in terms of learning and utilization. Although he thought that Yang Tian was stalling for time, Zhang Taixin still answered. She is the younger sister of the Hui family leader. Her name is Hui Miao Miao. Hui Miao Miao, what a nice name. Yang Tian thought, and then asked, what about the little girl? Just as Yang Tian asked this, the door was pushed open and the girl called Little Miss came in. She smiled and said, I am Hui Chan Chan. Chapter 647. After Hui Chan Chan said her name, she moved a chair and sat next to Yang Tian. She looked at Yang Tian curiously. With this girl sitting next to him, Yang Tian could not ask Zhang Taixin any more questions about the Hui family. Zhang Taixin also took out a rune book and pretended to be reading. Yang Tian began to focus on flipping through the book. He sped up. Yang Tian flipped through several books at an extremely fast speed. It did not look like he was reading, but simply flipping through books. Hui Chan Chan could not help but ask curiously, why are you reading so fast? Yang Tian smiled and said, I flip through books. Oh no, I read very quickly. I can read 10 lines at a glance. Did you memorize it? Hui Chan Chan asked curiously. Yang Tian said proudly, of course. Do you think I'm pretending? Hui Chan Chan rolled her eyes and picked up the book that Yang Tian had just flipped through. She waved it at Yang Tian and asked, then tell me, what is written on the 3rd page of this book? She was testing Yang Tian. Zhang Taixin put down the rune book in his hand and looked at this with interest. In fact, he also wanted to test Yang Tian just now. He wanted to know if Yang Tian had memorized the runes on the book. If Yang Tian could memorize the runes with just one glance, then his talent in runes would be incredible, because none of the stewards of the rune division, including him, could do that. The 3rd page, right? Yang Tian said. He took out a pen from the pen holder on the table and a piece of paper and began to write. In less than 3 minutes, Yang Tian finished. He pushed the paper to Hui Chan Chan and continued to flip through the rune book in his hand. Hui Chan Chan flipped through the book in her hand and looked at the piece of paper that Yang Tian had written from memory. She compared it seriously. After a long time, when Yang Tian had finished flipping through the book, Hui Chan Chan suddenly exclaimed. She opened her eyes wide and said, you really got it all right. No, I have to test you again. Yang Tian only smiled. Thinking about it, Hui Chan Chan took out the book at the bottom of the pile that Yang Tian had flipped through. After flipping through it, Hui Chan Chan said to Yang Tian, write the runes on the 5th and 20th pages. If you get them right again, I'll admit that you remember them all. Yang Tian put the book down and the book and began to write again. In less than 10 minutes, Yang Tian was done. He handed the 2 pages of runes to Hui Chan Chan before continuing to read. Like before, Hui Chan Chan began to compare carefully. At this time, Zhang Taixin could not sit still. He came behind Hui Chan Chan and carefully looked at the runes on the book and Yang Tian's runes. The more Zhang Taixin looked, the more shocked he was. Although he thought that the runes written by Yang Tian were ugly, they were completely accurate. Suddenly, Hui Chan Chan exclaimed again. Yang Tian, I didn't expect you to get them all right again. No, you have to write again. There was a second time, but not a third time. Yang Tian waved his hand and said, I'm not writing anymore. It's fine if you don't believe me. Hearing Yang Tian's words, Hui Chan Chan pouted. She was very unhappy. Yang Tian ignored her and focused on flipping through the book. The unread books on runes on the table decreased one by one. After calming himself down, Yang Tian suddenly realized that he could recognize some of the runes and knew the meaning of these runes. Although he did not deliberately study runes, Yang Tian still remembered some of the runes he had helped the strange program read. Yang Tian originally thought that Hui Chan Chan would leave after getting bored. He did not expect the girl to be very patient. She sat beside him and took out a cultivation technique from her storage bracelet and started reading it. She appeared to be very serious. Zhang Taixin was different. He looked at Yang Tian with a complicated expression. Through Hui Chan Chan's assessment of Yang Tian, Zhang Taixin had realized that Yang Tian was indeed a genius in the Tao of runes. Yang Tian's image in Zhang Taixuan's mind had changed too quickly. Zhang Taixian found it hard to accept. Yang Tian glanced at Zhang Taishuan's expression and knew how the old man felt. He did not say anything and continued flipping through the rune books. Yang Tian continued to flip through the books, using half a day's time. He had finished reading dozens of rune books. Lord Taixian, are there any more? Yang Tian asked with a smile after putting down the last book. Zhang Taixian shook his head. These are all the runes I've collected. If you want to see more runes, you'll have to go to the Cloud Domain and enter the Sacred Hall. Sacred Hall? Yang Tian asked. Yang Tian had heard these words many times. Before Zhang Taixian could answer, Hui Chanchan said, there are 3 sacred halls in the Cloud Domain. They are the Starry Sky Sacred Hall, the Sky Domain Sacred Hall, and the Wuji Sacred Hall. In the Cloud Domain, these 3 sacred halls are the 3 sects that rule the entire Cloud Domain continent. Aren't there any countries in the Cloud Domain? Yang Tian asked. Hui Chanchan shook her head. No, other than the sacred halls, there are only families. Actually, a family is an empire. In a world where cultivators existed, the conditions for a country to exist were actually weakened. For example, in the universe where Yang Tian had come from, an interstellar empire had to listen to the orders of the superstar Sacred Hall. If a country could not be independent and had to listen to the orders of other organizations and act according to other people's wishes, it could no longer be considered country. If there's a chance, I would like to go to the Cloud Domain and see for myself. After muttering to himself, Yang Tian looked at Hui Chanchan, whose eyes were wide open, and asked, have you been to the Cloud Domain before? Hui Chanchan nodded. When I was very young, my aunt took me there. It's a very beautiful place. I don't want to come back after going there. Hui Chanchan's eyes were filled with yearning as she spoke. It's not that easy to go to the Cloud Domain, Zhang Taixian said suddenly. Zhang Taixian suddenly said, because the population of the Cloud Domain is very dense. People from other regions are forbidden to stay in the Cloud Domain for long. Also, the Cloud Domain is not as beautiful as people think. Duke Taixian, have you been to the Cloud Domain before? Yang Tian asked curiously after Zhang Taixian finished speaking. Zhang Taixian only curled his lips and did not answer Yang Tian. While they were talking, the strange program had already sorted out the design and displayed a 3-dimensional diagram in Yang Tian's mind. The designed underground city was like an inverted golden pagoda. It was 1,000 meters tall from the ground to the deepest part of the underground. The part close to the surface was half the size of the clan's land. In this way, the inverted golden pagoda-shaped underground city could actually accommodate more people. After looking at the design, Yang Tian picked up a pen and drew a simple diagram on a piece of paper. He marked out some data and said to Zhang Taixian, Duke Taixian, what do you think of this underground city? So fast. Zhang Taixian looked surprised as he took Yang Tian's drawing in his hand. As soon as he saw the design, Zhang Taixian frowned. Because the design was too simple, even an underage child in the clan could draw such a design. Seeing the expression on Zhang Taishuan's face, Yang Tian said with a smile, this is just the outer appearance of the underground city. If I want a specific design, I'll have to draw it for a few days. Let me see. As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, Hui Chanchan snatched the diagram from Zhang Taishuan's hand. After looking at it, she could not help but giggle. Zhang Taixian frowned and said, then let's wait until you have all the design drawings. I have to remind you of a few points. First, although the buildings built underground are safer, there are many shortcomings. For example, there is insufficient light and ventilation. Also, living underground for a long time is not good for people's psychology and will create a sense of depression. Second, because of the humid environment, you have to consider the problem of building materials. Third, you have to calculate the cost and the time it takes to make the proposal. If the cost is too high, it will be a failure. Zhang Taixian raised a lot of questions in one breath. Yang Tian listened very carefully and even took notes. Although the strange program calculated the design drawings and took into account many possible problems. Chapter 648. After taking note of some of Ziyang Taishuan's questions, Yang Tian deliberated and asked some common knowledge questions of this world. This made Hui and Chan Chan look at Yang Tian as if they were looking at an alien. Because Yang Tian had accepted the mission, the Runes Division still arranged a place for Yang Tian, even though they thought it was impossible. It was a simple and crude room, but it had been tidied up by Karcha. Karst was determined to follow Yang Tian because he felt that Yang Tian's future was limitless. When Yang Tian rises in the future, he would be able to enjoy all the benefits he could get from Yang Tian's fingers. He rested for a night. The next day, Yang Tian did not go to Ziyang Taishuan's room. Instead, under Karcha's guidance, he went to the bank and exchanged 10 life crystals for lice crystals. When Yang Tian was in the mine, the louse crystal he collected was the size of a grain of rice and was in the form of light purple granules. The louse crystal that the bank exchanged for had been processed using a special method and had two different shapes. One was long, about 5 centimeters long and as thick as a finger. The other was round, twice the size of a grain of rice. One return its life crystal could be exchanged for 50 long lice crystals or 250 round lice crystals. In other words, 50 round lice crystals were equivalent to 1 long lice crystal. The long lice crystals were usually used for large transactions, while the round lice crystals could be used to buy items of lower value. Yang Tian exchanged for 500 round lice crystals and 400 long lice crystals. Other than exchanging for lice crystals, there was also a special paper currency that could be used in the entire flame domain. Most ordinary humans in the clan used paper currency. Cultivators were rich and had storage tools, so it was more convenient for them to use lice crystals. But for ordinary humans, without storage tools, lice crystals would fall off easily and were inconvenient to carry around. The wages of Karst and the others were also paid in paper money. Of course, they could also exchange paper for lice crystals of equal value. Karst had a storage ring with a small storage space. Every time he received his salary, he would immediately exchange it for lice crystals. He had stayed in the Hui family for more than 10 years, but the number of lice crystals he had accumulated wasn't even 1/10 of what Yang Tian had. There were a total of 18 life crystals. Yang Tian exchanged 10 of them, while the remaining 8 were reserved for the little blue dragon. Although the little blue dragon had consumed 8 return its life crystals, and the energy it had obtained was not enough for it to break through, it was still better than nothing. For example, if he was tired after a battle, he could use it to replenish the energy of the little blue dragon. Hearing Yang Tian telling the little blue dragon that he would leave 8 life crystals for it as snacks, Karcha was envious. The little blue dragon responded to Karcha's proud gaze. Every time he looked at Karst, the little blue dragon would think of that fatty from Juliang City. Actually, before the beast tide, the clan's land was very prosperous. There were shops everywhere, and the people on the streets were all huddled together. As they walked, Kacha described the scene of the beast horde to Yang Tian after seeing the ruins around them. The clan's land is so big, and there are so many people. What do they eat? Yang Tian asked curiously after Karst finished. Karst said, farming. A small ice crystal can be dissolved in water using a special method. In a month's time, a strong grain can produce enough grain for a family of 3. As for other food, some of them are grown like strong grains. Some of them are harvested by cultivators from faraway forests, and some of them are obtained from hunting exotic beasts. Yang Tian finally remembered that when he ate, there would be a large piece of food that was slightly smaller than a football. It tasted like a sweet potato. So this was strong grain. Strong grain had a purple outer shell. After peeling it off, there were snow-white crystals inside, just like pearls. They were soft in the mouth and had a sweet taste. An ordinary person would need to eat about 2 of them every day to maintain the energy needed for a day's work. Quickly take me to have a look. Yang Tian urged Karst out of curiosity. Karst nodded and led Yang Tian to the center of the clan's land. After passing through the fourth wall, they saw a strong grain tree that was thicker than an adult's thigh. The leaves of this kind of tree were very thick, light green, and palm-sized. The trees were densely packed with strong grains. There were at least several hundred strong grains on each tree. The tree's skill bar was very hard. It was thinner than a finger, and more than 10 strong grains could be hung on it. It looked very strong. This was probably the origin of this tree's name. The strong grains produced by this tree could support an adult for at least half a year. Looking at the roots of the trees, they were surrounded by bluestones. There was black soil inside, and it was obvious that it had just been loosened. What are the conditions for this kind of tree to grow? Yang Tian asked curiously. Kars said, it doesn't have high requirements. It only needs sunlight for a moment every day. However, it is afraid of the cold. Can it be grown underground? Yang Tian asked again. Kars said, if it can receive sunlight, it will be okay. The sunlight here was the same as the sunlight on Earth. It was the light from the stars in the sky. After seeing this kind of tree, Yang Tian felt that the people in this world were very fortunate. They didn't need to worry about food. No wonder people didn't get sick. This food was truly green. It absorbed the energy of the lice crystal to grow. When ordinary people ate this kind of food, it was the same as indirectly absorbing the energy of the lice crystal. Although the amount wasn't much, it could still keep people healthy. In the next few days, Yang Tian wandered around the clan's land. Because the design of the underground city had to consider the production and living conditions of the people. Just like the strong grains, the construction of the underground city had to use runes to project the light of the stars into the city. Only then could the strong grains grow. 7 days of the 10 days agreed, with Huey Meow Meow quickly passed. On the 8th day, Yang Tian went out for a walk and then went to Zhang Taixian's workshop. When Yang Tian went out these days, although only Kars followed him, there was someone watching Yang Tian all the time. At this time, the strange program had finished the design. Yang Tian entered Zhang Taixian's room. There was no one inside. After searching for a long time, Yang Tian finally found a few large, blank pieces of paper. The clan's land model in the middle of the room had been removed. Yang Tian could use it to draw. Of course, the drawing process was a strange program that controlled Yang Tian's body to draw on the blueprint. Yang Tian and Karst had just laid out the paper when the door was pushed open. The first to enter was Zhang Taixian, followed by an unfamiliar old man in a red robe. Then came Huey Chan, followed by a large group of people from the Rune Division. Zhang Taixian didn't say anything. The unfamiliar old man came in front of Yang Tian and said to Yang Tian, don't hurry to draw the design. Defeat me first. I want to fight with you. If you lose, leave the Rune Division immediately. If you win, I will listen to you. Good, good. Huey and Chan clapped their hands and cheered. Yang Tian scratched his head and stared at the unfamiliar old man with wide eyes. What was going on? Chapter 649. So do you dare? The red-robed elder looked at Yang Tian and sneered. Yang Tian was not one to admit defeat. In the face of such provocation, he naturally replied, why wouldn't I dare? Good. Follow me to the law hall. With that, the red-robed elder turned and left. Who is he? Yang Tian grabbed Huey Chan and asked with a frown. Huey Chan was not unhappy when Yang Tian grabbed her. She smiled at Yang Tian and said, he is the head of the Runes Division, Tai Xing. He is a level 4 talisman master, Yang Tian. I hope you can defeat him. With that, Huey Chan waved her fist at Yang Tian to cheer him on. I'll try my best. Yang Tian smiled. Following behind the group of people, Yang Tian entered the largest house in the Runes Division. He then walked down the stone steps and arrived at a spacious stone room dozens of meters underground. This stone room was square in shape. It was about 50 meters wide and 10 meters tall. This was the law hall that the Runes Division had mentioned. The law hall was also where the Runes Division researched runes. This was because in the process of researching runes, there was a possibility of generating a powerful force. Hence, the law hall was a special place. The ceiling, floor, and walls of the law hall were all carved with runes. These runes could generate a powerful defensive force and absorb all kinds of destructive forces. In the middle of the law hall was a round platform that was 10 meters wide and a few meters tall. After Tai Xing entered this place, he directly jumped onto this round platform and sat down cross-legged. After Yang Tian walked into the law hall, he looked around. To Yang Tian's surprise, the law hall was already filled with people. There were many seats around the round platform. In front of the seats was a table that was 2 meters long. On the table were food, drinks, and other items. There were a total of 36 seats divided into 3 circles. The arrangement was extremely ingenious. If one were to look down from above, the seats and the circular platform in the middle would look like the 8 trigrams. The front row was already filled with people. Yang Tian knew Huey Meow Meow, but the others were all old men. Yang Tian didn't know any of them. After Yang Tian entered, Zhang Taixian, one of the heads of the runes department, sat in the outermost seat. The others also took their seats. Hui, Yichan Chan sat beside her sister Hui Meow Meow. Those who could sit here were all people with a certain status in the Hui family. The others could only stand and watch. At least 200 people had gathered in the hall. Ever since Yang Tian had entered the law hall, Tai Xing had been watching Yang Tian closely. Hence, most people's attention was on Yang Tian. Everyone was clear about what had happened this time. The head of the runes department, Tai Xing, wanted to fight Yang Tian. This was the first time something like this had happened in the Hui family. Furthermore, it was a well-known rune master challenging a young man. Yang Tian was really too young. No matter how one looked at him, he didn't look like a rune Dao expert. After scanning the law hall, Yang Tian walked down the platform under the watchful eyes of the crowd. A battle of techniques required a quiet environment. Although many people were watching the show, the entire law hall was very quiet. No one spoke, and even the sound of breathing was relatively soft. Yang Tian wasn't sure how to fight a battle of techniques. However, he knew that he had to go up on the platform. Hence, Yang Tian leaped on a platform. This guy really doesn't know the rules. Seeing Yang Tian jump onto the platform, someone couldn't help but comment. This sentence was very loud in the silent law hall. Yang Tian, who had jumped onto the platform, was puzzled when he heard it. Seeing Yang Tian jump onto the platform, Tai Xing's face darkened. He said plainly, "Do you want to have a battle of life and death with me?" Yang Tian understood that he shouldn't be on the platform now. He scratched his head awkwardly and said, "Sorry, I don't know the rules." Tai Xing said, "You're a rune master and you don't know the rules?" Yang Tian nodded very sincerely. Tai Xing saw that Yang Tian's expression didn't seem like he was lying. However, this made him even more unhappy. This was because those who didn't know the rules were usually amateurs. He was a level 4 rune master. If he challenged an amateur, even if he won easily, it would be a very embarrassing thing if word got out in the future. Humph! After snorting coldly, Tai Xing raised his hand and pointed below the platform. He said, "You'll set questions below the platform, and I'll answer them. The questions must be related to runes. I'll answer as many questions as you set. When I get 3 questions wrong, I'll get off the platform. Next, it's your turn to go on the platform, and I'll set the questions. In this process, there are 3 requirements for the questions. First, you must be able to complete the questions on the platform in a short time. Second, you must be able to complete the questions set by the question setter in a short time. Third, in the process of answering the questions, you must not take out rune books or items that record rune information to look at." When Tai Xing said this, Yang Tian roughly understood what this battle was. This was equivalent to a kind of literary battle. Yang Tian originally thought that the two of them would use the power of runes to fight on the platform. He thought that this was the whole process of the battle. He didn't expect that after Tai Xing finished with the 3 requirements, he said, "After the 2 of us set the questions, both of you will go on the platform, and the rune masters below the platform will set the questions. Whoever solves the most questions will win." There was actually such a process. Yang Tian scanned the audience below the platform and felt that he was at a disadvantage in this competition. Seeing Yang Tian's expression, Tai Xing said, "Don't worry, I won't take advantage of you. The questions will be set by the clan elders." Clan elders. Yang Tian took another careful look below the platform and realized that the 3 clan elders he had seen before were actually seated. Furthermore, the 3 clan elders were sitting in a circle in the middle. The clan elders were the upper echelons of the Hui family. However, compared to people like Huey Meow Meow, their status in the clan was lower. The clan elders could be seen as the housekeepers of the Hui family. In that case, the people sitting in the middle should also be clan elders like the 3 clan elders. Then, who was the middle-aged man in black robes sitting beside Huey Meow Meow? When Yang Tian looked at the middle-aged man, the ordinary-looking middle-aged man also looked at Yang Tian. The man smiled and nodded at Yang Tian. "Now let's begin," Tai Xing suddenly said. Yang Tian had no choice but to jump off the platform. Since they were all below the platform, Yang Tian stood beside Huey Chan Chan. Now, it was Yang Tian's turn to set the question. Tai Xing, who was sitting cross-legged on the platform, closed his eyes. What kind of question would be difficult for this old man to solve? Yang Tian pinched his chin and frowned as he thought. To Yang Tian, solving the question was easy. However, setting the question was a little troublesome. Just as he was in a dilemma, Yang Tian heard a chuckle beside him. It turned out that Huey Chan Chan had seen Yang Tian's frown and couldn't help but laugh. However, after seeing Huey Chan Chan, Yang Tian suddenly had a question in his mind. Chapter 650. Manager, how about we compete in memory runes? Yang Tian looked at Tai Xing on the stage and said with a smile after thinking of the assessment topic. "Please." Tai Xing opened his eyes and said lightly. Yang Tian nodded and said to Ziyang Taixian, "I'll have to ask Duke Taixian for help with this matter." Ziyang Taixian was the person Yang Tian was most familiar with in the Rune Division, so he had to ask Ziyang Taixian for help. Ziyang Taixian understood Yang Tian's meaning. He stood up and said to the other managers, "Everyone, help me write 2 pages of runes each." More than a dozen managers nodded, took out paper and pens from their storage tools, and began to write. Including Ziyang Taixian, there were a total of 18 managers. Each of them wrote 2 pages, which added up to 36 pages. They were all rune masters, so they carried paper and pens to record runes. A few minutes later, Ziyang Taixian put away the 36 pages, numbered them, walked to Yang Tian, and handed them to Yang Tian. Yang Tian did not look at them, and said to Tai Xing, "If you can memorize all of them in 100 breaths of time, it's my loss." With that, Yang Tian handed a stack of papers full of runes to Tai Xing on the stage. It was not difficult, so no one found it strange. When Tai Xing reached out to take it, everyone looked at Tai Xing. 100 breaths of time, which was the time it took an ordinary person to breathe 100 times, was about 3 minutes. In fact, after Yang Tian came up with this topic, Tai Xing felt it was a little difficult. If it was the rune books he usually read, he could recite them backwards, but these were all written randomly, so it was too difficult to remember. Although he felt it was difficult, Tai Xing still flipped through it. 100 breaths of time passed quickly. Cultivators were sensitive to time. After 100 breaths of time, Tai Xing had also finished reading the 36 pages of runes. Tai Xing looked up at Yang Tian, who was smiling with his hands folded, and took out a pen and paper to write. Everyone in the Justice Hall held their breaths at the same time. The people from the Rune Division were especially nervous. This was because Tai Xing was the chief manager of the Runes Division and had the highest attainments in runes. If he lost to Yang Tian, it meant that no one in the entire Runes Division could compare to Yang Tian. When Tai Xing was writing, he frowned. After writing more than 10 pages, he stopped and shook his head. This also meant that he had failed. "Since you came up with the question, it's your turn now." After Tai Xing put down his pen, someone said loudly to Yang Tian. Yang Tian smiled and nodded. Tai Xing handed the 36 pages of runes back to Yang Tian, and Yang Tian held it in his hand. At this moment, Huey Chan Chan looked at Yang Tian with wide eyes and a smile on her face. She knew that Yang Tian would definitely win this question. She had tested Yang Tian a few days ago. Besides Huey Chan, even Zhang Taixian knew that Yang Tian had won. Yang Tian flipped through the pages quickly and finished reading in less than 100 breaths of time. Then, he handed the 36 pages back to Zhang Taixian and asked him for a pen and paper to write. No one could compare to the strange program when it came to memorizing runes. This was because the strange program recorded runes in a different way from humans. It was like a camera that quickly took pictures. When Yang Tian was writing the runes, the strange program would show the contents of each page of runes in Yang Tian's mind. Yang Tian just had to copy it. In about 5 minutes, Yang Tian was done. Zhang Taixian divided the 36 pages that Yang Tian had written into 18 copies and distributed them. After a round of inspection, the 18 managers were convinced. Yang Tian's copying was simply too accurate. They had deliberately written the wrong runes, and Yang Tian had copied them accordingly. This ability to memorize runes was simply terrifying. "I've lost this question," Taixing admitted directly after the results were out. He was very straightforward. Next was the second question. Yang Tian had thought of this question on the spot. He said, "Use no more than 50 runes to design a small defensive array formation. No matter how strong the defense is, it's fine as long as it's effective. 50 runes can be used repeatedly." This question was like writing an essay. For example, give 50 Chinese characters and write a short story. Every question had to be completed in a short time. Taixing thought for more than 10 minutes and sighed. "I admit defeat for this question. This kind of question was very easy for Yang Tian, no for the strange program. This was because the strange program had a huge amount of rune information. Before coming up with this question, Yang Tian had asked the strange program in his mind. The strange program told Yang Tian that he didn't need 50 runes. He only needed 46 runes. Therefore, Yang Tian said this question. After Taixing admitted defeat, Yang Tian didn't need anyone to remind him. He took out a rune pen and started to draw on Huey Chan stone table. When Yang Tian finished drawing the last rune energy line, there was a faint energy fluctuation. Everyone could feel it without getting close. A few managers went forward and looked at the rune array that Yang Tian had drawn. They nodded at Taixing on the stage. At this time, they could see that Taixing's expression was a little gloomy. "Unbelievable. These are all common runes. I didn't expect them to have such a great effect when combined." One of the managers couldn't help but exclaim after seeing the rune array that Yang Tian had drawn. At the same time, there was a look of enlightenment in his eyes. Yang Tian smiled. "Sometimes, simple things are actually the most useful. It just depends on whether we know how to use them." When Yang Tian said this, the little blue dragon on his shoulder was smiling. It knew that Yang Tian didn't have this kind of ability. It was all thanks to the strange program. These rune masters wanted to compete with Yang Tian in runes. That was simply showing off in front of an expert. Although the cultivators in this world were powerful, they weren't the smartest. This was because the strange program was designed by the rune master, and the rune master wasn't from this world. Next was the third question. Yang Tian also did not wish to strike Taixing too harshly. He knew the principle of stopping before going too far. Therefore, he came up with a question that looked complicated, but was very simple for someone knowledgeable in runes. The third question, please write 1,000 different life runes. As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, Taixing nodded and quickly finished writing. Yang Tian was considered to have lost this question. Taixing would only get off the stage if he failed 3 questions. But after writing 1,000 life runes, Taixing jumped off the stage and said to Yang Tian, "This old man will also give 3 questions." Yang Tian also didn't want to drag it on for too long. He nodded in agreement. In fact, Taixing also knew that Yang Tian had left him some face. Otherwise, if he failed 3 questions in a row, he would be too embarrassed to be a manager in the future. Chapter 651. Yang Tian jumped onto the stage and imitated Taixing. He sat down cross-legged and waited for Tai Xing to come up with a question. Tai Xing had lost 2 rounds and won 1. He was at a disadvantage. When he came up with a question, he had to rack his brains. If he lost this round again, there was no need to compete later. When he first saw Yang Tian, Tai Xing looked down on Yang Tian because Yang Tian was too young. Runes were not like other things. It took a long time to learn to reach a certain level. Even talented people had to learn for a long time. No matter how he looked at it, Yang Tian did not look like a rune master. Cultivators did not judge age by appearance, but by feeling the other party's aura of life. The younger the person, the more immature the aura of life. However, after a few rounds, Tai Xing's confidence was already lacking. The psychological contrast made him feel very uncomfortable. After living for so many years, this was the first time he was defeated by a young boy. Tai Xing was not the only one who felt uncomfortable. The other rune masters present also could not believe this result. After pacing for a while under the stage, Tai Xing finally thought of the question and said to Yang Tian, "Use less than 100 space runes to form a teleportation array. Complete a teleportation without the need for lice crystals." When Tai Xing came up with this question, the people of the Rune Division opened their eyes wide at the same time. Because this question was used by the Rune Master Association to assess the level of a Rune Master. If one could complete this question, one would be qualified to become a Level 4 Rune Master. Regarding the level certification of a Rune Master, there was a Rune Master Association in the entire continent, including the 4 major regions. To join the Rune Master Association, one must go through the level certification process. And the level certification process was very strict. No one expected that Tai Xing would come up with such a question. If Yang Tian could complete it, wouldn't he have the ability of a level 4 Rune Master? Yang Tian was still so young. Yang Tian pinched his chin and thought. In fact, Yang Tian was pretending. This was the strange sequence calculating Tai Xing's question. Yang Tian had helped the strange sequence to read the runes at Xiang Tai Xian's place. At this time, it happened to be of great use. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to complete this question if the database of strange program runes was insufficient. This was due to the systematization and refinement of the magic symbols in this world. Almost every charm magician had enough information about magic symbols. Of course, whether or not he knew how to use it was another matter. About 3 minutes later, the strange program said to Yang Tian, "That's enough. Actually, we don't need 100 runes. 79 of them are enough." It had only been 3 minutes. If Yang Tian said that he had thought it through, it would definitely be shocking. Yang Tian wanted to show off his abilities, but at the same time, he couldn't be too stunning, because he didn't want to continue developing in the Talisman Dao at all. Yang Tian wanted the cultivation process to be the kind of continuous fighting, the kind that was hot-blooded and exciting. This was not only what Yang Tian needed, but also what the little blue dragon needed. When faced with so many paths, everyone could only choose one path to advance. The path that Yang Tian had chosen was undoubtedly a thrilling one. If he could walk down this path smoothly, his speed of improvement would be very, very fast. Have you thought it through? In a few more breaths, you'll have failed. Yang Tian pinched his chin, frowned, and pretended to be deep in thought. Tai Xing finally couldn't help but ask when time was almost up. Yang Tian nodded. "I have thought it through." As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, 2 people from the Rune Division carried a square blue stone onto the stage and placed it in front of Yang Tian. Then, someone turned on the projection and displayed the blue stone. Yang Tian didn't expect this stage to have such a wonderful use. Yang Tian took out the runes from his storage bracelet and started to engrave them under the control of the strange program. In less than 5 minutes, Yang Tian had finished engraving. At this moment, the blue stone was covered with precise runes, as if it had been engraved by a machine. This made many rune masters sigh in admiration. Previously, when Yang Tian had engraved the runes on Hui Chanchan's table, many people didn't see it. When he used the last energy line to connect the 2 runes, waves of energy were emitted in all directions. Without needing to check, The rune masters knew that the runes that Yang Tian had engraved were effective. Moreover, from the projection, they could see that the number of spatial runes that Yang Tian had used was definitely less than 100. Of course, there were some that could be used repeatedly. This is simply a form of art. I never thought that those few runes could be used like this. Yes, too ingenious. How do you think of this? He actually completed this question. His rune skills are at least that of a level 4 rune master. Genius. He really is a genius. In the Justice Hall, after everyone saw the rune array that Yang Tian had engraved, they were silent for a moment. Suddenly, there was a burst of discussion. Because the Justice Hall was sealed, the voices were getting louder and louder. Cough, cough. Tai Xing had no choice but to speak, and only then did his voice become softer. There were still 2 questions left. If Yang Tian could answer one more question correctly, then he would be tied with Tai Xing. However, Tai Xing had no intention of continuing the competition. He looked at Yang Tian on the stage and said, "I have lost." As the head of the Hui family's rune division, Tai Xing decisively admitted defeat. Those who understood runes could see that Yang Tian was indeed capable. He wasn't a braggart, as they had suspected. Boom! As soon as Tai Xing finished speaking, the discussion that had just died down in the Justice Hall was once again heard. To make such a decision, Tai Xing had also made a sudden decision. Since Tai Xing had admitted defeat, then the rest of the process could be skipped. All right. At this time, Ka Cha clenched his fist and shouted excitedly. Of course, he hoped that Yang Tian would win. At this time, Yang Tian noticed that the black-robed, middle-aged man next to Hui Miao Miao had stood up. As soon as he stood up, Hui Miao Miao and the others all stood up as well. When he saw this, Yang Tian could not help but guess the identity of this black-robed, middle-aged man. After the black-robed, middle-aged man stood up, he nodded at Yang Tian with a smile, then turned around and left the Justice Hall. Yang Tian jumped down from the stage. Yang Tian, you are so good. I have high hopes for you. Hui Chan ran in front of Yang Tian and pulled on Yang Tian's arm as she said with a smile. Yang Tian thought to himself, "What's the point of a little girl like you having high hopes for me? If the Hui family had high hopes for me, then I would have a bright future." Who is that? Thinking of this, Yang Tian asked curiously. She is the family leader, Hui Baixing. The one who answered Yang Tian's question was Hui Miao Miao. Heads, elders, and Yang Tian, the family leader has invited all of you to the Justice Hall to discuss the future construction of the family grounds. Suddenly, someone shouted at the entrance of the Justice Hall. As soon as he said that, many people looked at Yang Tian enviously, because the family leader had personally invited Yang Tian. Chapter 652. It was a great honor to be invited by the clan leader. Others might feel that way, but Yang Tian didn't feel the same way. Yang Tian followed Hui Miao Miao to the teleportation area of the Rune Division. He used the teleportation array disc and arrived at the meeting hall. The meeting hall was a very secretive place for the Hui clan. Many important meetings were held there. This was another underground space, but it was at least 3 times bigger than the meeting hall. It was arranged in the style of a hall. When Yang Tian, Hui Miao Miao, and Hui Chan appeared, they were in the center of the hall. They couldn't see the door around them. The height from the ground to the top was about 20 meters. There were many exquisite, glowing rune array devices that looked like chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. They illuminated the hall very brightly. The floor was covered with blue tiles that looked like sapphires. They were so shiny that they could see their own shadows. In front of them was a high platform. Clan leader Hui Baixing was already sitting on it. He didn't look very dignified and was very casual. There were more than 10 people in 2 rows below him. They were probably the elders of the Hui clan. Below them were the managers of the various divisions. There were 2 empty seats near the front. Hui Miao Miao walked over and sat on an empty seat. Hui Chan was still young, so she stood behind her elder sister. Yang Tian glanced around and sat at the last seat. Yang Tian, come and sit here. Yang Tian had just sat down when Hui Baixing pointed at an empty seat in the front row and said with a smile. Yang Tian stood up and walked to the empty seat in front of Hui Miao Miao. After sitting down, Yang Tian scanned the hall. There were at least a few hundred people in the hall. 90% of them looked old. Heixian General and Zhang Taixian, whom Yang Tian was familiar with, were among them. After everyone was present, Hui Baixing smiled and said, "Today, I have gathered everyone here to discuss two matters. These concerns the future development of the Hui family." After saying this, the Radiance Calamity Baixing paused for a moment before continuing. "The first thing is that the temple's recruitment of servants is coming soon. This time, the clans of the 3rd class and above had 100 spots. I hope that the elders will send their registered nephews to participate. Although the chances are slim, we still have to try. This concerned the future of the Hui family. If someone could successfully enter the Divine Hall and become a deacon, they would be able to obtain a higher-level cultivation method from the Divine Hall. Wouldn't everyone benefit from it? The second matter was the construction of the clan land. It's not that I want to make things difficult for you. According to reliable sources, a female deity crossed the Milky Way and appeared in the cloud region. She attracted a group of powerful, strange beasts. It was foreseeable that in the near future, even stronger mutated beasts would appear in the 4 major regions, except for the Cloud Realm. At that time, the old clan land would not be able to defend against an even more powerful beast tide. Therefore, the only way is to build the clan land underground. When Hui Baixing mentioned the female deity, Yang Tian's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the female deity that Hui Baixing was talking about was very likely Qin Fei. Yang Tian lowered his head and fell in a deep thought. While Yang Tian was thinking, a group of people were discussing which youngsters would be selected to participate in the Divine Hall's recruitment test. The Hui family was a 3rd-class clan. There were many youngsters in the clan, and at least a few hundred of them were qualified to participate. However, there were only 100 spots, and a group of people would be eliminated. Who would be selected and who would be eliminated would have to be debated. Although no matter who was selected, they would all be Hui family members, but it concerned the clan's personal interests. Basically, the elders were the ones debating, and the people in charge were all silent. This debate lasted for a long time. In the end, many of the people in charge started to doze off. This debate had nothing to do with them at all. "Yang Tian, what are you doing?" Shen Tian was daydreaming when he heard Hui Chanshan's voice. Yang Tian finally woke up. He lifted his head and looked at Hui Chanshan with a puzzled expression. "Are you sleeping?" Hui Chanshan asked again. "No, I'm thinking about something," Yang Tian said. Hui Chanshan giggled and reached out her hand, slowly approaching the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon coiled up on Yang Tian's shoulder with its eyes closed. It looked like it was asleep. When Hui Chanshan's fingertips were 1 centimeter away from the little blue dragon suddenly opened its eyes and looked coldly at Hui Chanshan. Hui Chanshan was so frightened that she quickly retracted her hand and almost took a step back. "This little guy is really alert," Hui Chanshan exclaimed. She pouted and said to the little blue dragon, "Can't you let me touch you?" The little azure dragon ignored Hui and Chanshan and closed its eyes in boredom. Hui Chanshan saw that the little blue dragon was ignoring her and snorted unhappily. After shifting her attention away from the little blue dragon, Hui Chanshan said to Yang Tian, "Yang Tian, I will definitely be chosen. When the time comes, can you help me?" "Help you with what?" Yang Tian asked curiously. Hui Chanshan said, "The test. You help me pass the test, and let me become a deacon of the temple. As long as I succeed, I will repay you. There are so many powerful people in your family. You don't need my help, right?" Yang Tian said. Hui Chanshan said, "But I think you're the most powerful." Since this beautiful girl thought so highly of him, Yang Tian nodded and said with a smile, "All right, if I can help you, I will definitely help you." Seeing that Yang Tian agreed, Hui Chanshan smiled happily. Deacon was a job in the temple. Since the temple was in the cloud region and Qin Fei had appeared in the cloud region, she would definitely have left some information. Yang Tian had to go to the cloud region. What is a deacon? Yang Tian asked again. Hui Yichanshan said, a deacon is a cultivator who enters the temple. They will be nurtured by the temple. After becoming a deacon, they will have to go through the temple's test every once in a while. If they don't pass, they will be expelled from the temple. Many people from our Hui Yi family have entered the temple in the past tens of thousands of years. Even the family leader was once a deacon. Unfortunately, he didn't pass the test. When talking about the family leader, Hui Yichanshan's voice became much softer. Hui Miao Miao was sitting to the side. Naturally, she heard the conversation between Yang Tian and her sister clearly. When Hui Yichanshan mentioned that the family leader was expelled from the temple, Hui Miao Miao frowned, because this was not a glorious thing for the Hui Yi family. Seeing that her sister wanted to continue talking to Yang Tian, Hui Miao Miao coughed and said to Hui Yichanshan, come here. Oh. Hui Yichanshan answered and went back to her sister helplessly. After half a day of debate, the list of 100 people was finally decided. An elder wrote it down and handed it to Hui Yi Baixing. Hui Yi Baixing took a look and nodded. He folded it and placed it on the table and said, now, let's talk about the second matter. With that, he looked at Yang Tian and said, Yang Tian, you tell them. Chapter 653. Yang Tian did not expect Huiha Baixing to let him speak first. After standing up from his seat, Yang Tian said, I have already thought about the design of the underground city. Within half a month, I will be able to draw up the blueprint, list the materials, and plan the construction. Don't worry, Patriarch. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise them now. After speaking, Yang Tian sat down. In the past few days, Yang Tian had learned a lot of useful information. Based on this information, the strange program had made some changes to the blueprint, making the underground city even more perfect. Yang Tian thought that if the underground city was built according to the strange program's blueprint, the Hui family would not have to worry about losing people in the future beast hordes. Hiding underground was a very good idea. Actually, the mines would also be attacked by mutated beasts. However, those places were special. Thousands of meters underground, there were countless mines. When the beast hordes came, the guards would notice in advance. The miners would hide 1,000 meters underground and seal the entrance so that they would not be discovered by the mutated beasts. Even if they were discovered, the mutated beasts would not be able to enter the mines because of their huge bodies. The only downside was that they could not stay in the mines for too long. The mines could only hold tens of thousands of people. This method would not work in the clan. A family had millions of people. So many people needed to produce and live. They could not stay underground for too long. A family here was like a small country. The Hui family was the ruler. To make a family prosperous, it was not enough to just collect Laos crystals. The clan needed culture and entertainment. They needed people to create all kinds of production tools. They needed to increase the population and maintain the number of cultivators in the family. Without the beast horde, Yang Tian could imagine that in less than 100 years, these clans would expand at an exponential rate within the Flame region. After that, they would devour each other. A huge empire might even appear. After Yang Tian sat down, Patriarch Huiha Baixing nodded. At this time, Huiha Baixing could already see that Yang Tian was a rare talent. If he could keep Yang Tian, the Hui family might be able to realize his hidden ambition. As a leader, the ability to judge people was the most basic ability. If one did not have the ability to judge people, one would not be able to become the patriarch of a family. I want to ask, if the clan is built underground, what will we do about the food we need? Do we have to buy it from other families? Or do we have to open another plantation? At this time, an elder stood up and asked Yang Tian. Yang Tian had already said that he could raise any questions. Now that someone asked him this, he stood up and said, I've already considered this problem. When the time comes, the first and second level of the underground city the plant will be built. When the time comes, it will be enough food for 50 million people. How? The elder asked again. The Baixing to Baixing, 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 and Baixing, Baixing to Baixing. Baixing, 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 Xing, 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 Baixing, Baixing, by Bei Baxing, Xing, 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 by Bei Bei Baxing, Xing, 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 by and by Bei Bei Bag, Xing, 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 Xing. When the beast tide comes, the rune mechanism will be activated, and the underground city will descend a few thousand meters underground. The top will be completely sealed. When the topic was brought up, Yang Tian became more talkative. The new underground city's planning will be different from the current one. There will be 100 levels, and each level will be equipped with many teleport portals. Other than the few levels that are not accessible, the residents will be able to reach their destination instantly. For example, the 3rd to 20th levels will be the residential areas for ordinary people. The levels will be designated as markets and commercial areas. After half an hour, Yang Tian finished explaining the situation of the underground city. When the elders were discussing the candidates for the temple deacon assessment, the managers of the various divisions were about to doze off. But when Yang Tian was explaining, everyone listened attentively. In their minds, the scene described by Yang Tian appeared. If it could be realized, the underground city would be perfect. It would be countless times better than the current clan land. I would like to know where the underground city will be built. According to what you said, it needs to be at least a few thousand meters deep. Here, if we dig a few hundred meters deep, there will be water. During the construction process, if we don't dig a few thousand meters deep, water will seep in. How will we continue to build? The one who asked this question was the Rune Division Manager, Tai Xing. After Tai Xing raised this question, he didn't sit down. Instead, he stared at Yang Tian and waited for Yang Tian's answer. Yang Tian smiled. That's easy. Rune arrays can solve this problem. I guarantee that during the construction process, even if we dig 10,000 meters deep, there won't be a single drop of water. After the underground city is built, we can remove the waterproof rune array. The water surrounding the underground city will be a natural defense. After Yang Tian finished speaking, Tai Xing nodded and sat down. Another manager stood up and said to Yang Tian, since your attainments in Talisman Dao are so high, why do you still want to build an underground city? With so many materials, why don't you just set up a talisman array with powerful defensive power outside the clan's land? In this way, we only need to modify the current clan land. It will save time and effort. Before Yang Tian could answer, Huey Meow Meow stood up and said the clan land is so big. If we have to set up such a rune array, we won't be able to afford it. After Huey Meow Meow finished speaking, Yang Tian nodded and said, that's true. Those who know about rune arrays know that the energy defense of a rune array is three-dimensional, which is circular, like a bubble. But now, the clan land exists in a flat surface and is spread over a wide area. Building a rune array that covers the entire clan land will waste at least 80% of the rune array's energy. But if it's a three-dimensional underground city, it will be different. At least 60% of the rune array's defensive range will be used. In other words, building an underground city can save almost half of the energy consumption. This is only from a single layer of rune arrays. If we include multiple layers of defensive rune arrays, the energy savings will be even more impressive. Building an underground city may cost a lot in one go, but after a long time, the cost will decrease. After Yang Tian finished speaking, most of the people present nodded. There's another problem. Another manager stood up and said, in the future, there will be fewer casualties. Even the ordinary people living in the underground city won't be harmed. The population will increase rapidly. How can we solve this problem? After this person finished speaking, the words family planning appeared in Yang Tian's mind. He couldn't help but laugh. When Yang Tian laughed, everyone looked at him, thinking that he had an answer. Isn't it a good thing to have more people? Yang Tian was stunned for a moment before he laughed and said, with more people, we can open up a new clan land. Sometimes, having more people is also a form of strength, isn't it? Yang Tian meant that there was strength in numbers. After speaking, Yang Tian sat down. As Yang Tian spoke frankly and answered questions, Huey Chan looked at Yang Tian with brighter and brighter eyes. Is there anyone else who has an opinion? If not, we'll carry it out. Clan leader Huey Baixing glanced at the people below. Seeing that no one had any more questions, he spoke up. As soon as Radiance Baixing finished speaking, the elders and the other leaders nodded and agreed to the plan of building an underground city. Good. Yang Tian, you will be in charge of this. During the construction period, you can use the manpower of the various divisions. Meow Meow, you will cooperate with Yang Tian. Yes. Everyone immediately stood up and bowed to Huey Baixing. Yang Tian was flattered by Huey Baixing's order. He thought to himself, this clan leader is really bold. Chapter 654. After leaving the meeting hall, Yang Tian went back to the Rune Division through the teleportation formation. Huey Meow Meow and Huey Chan followed Yang Tian closely. Now, the Rune Division's attitude towards Yang Tian was very different. They had prepared a large workshop for Yang Tian. After entering the workshop, Yang Tian closed the door. Under the curious gazes of the two sisters, he started to draw the blueprint. If only he had advanced electronic technology. In less than an hour, he would be able to print out the blueprint. But now he had to draw it by hand. Although the strange program controlled his body to draw the blueprint, it was still very tiring for Yang Tian. This was because he had to control his thoughts to prevent them from affecting the strange program. After 10 days, Yang Tian finished drawing the blueprint. Then he used another 5 days to list the various materials needed to build the underground city. There were hundreds of blueprints, and the list of materials was also dozens of pages. They were all very thick. After finishing all these, he was not done yet. Later on, Yang Tian still needed to choose a location, plan the construction process, method, and various manpower. Luckily, these tasks only needed Yang Tian to give a general direction. The specific plans could be divided up by the various departments. After handing over the blueprints and the list of materials, Yang Tian felt much more relaxed. The chosen location was next to the clan's land. Thousands of people in the Rune Division started to move at the same time. They circled an area of dozens of kilometers and set up the talisman array that Yang Tian had drawn. Immediately, hundreds of thousands of people started working at the same time, digging a V-shaped pit that was thousands of meters deep in this area. Huey Meow Meow was sent out by Yang Tian to be in charge of purchasing materials. Most of the materials were bluestones that were fine and could be used to carve runes. Luckily, there were storage tools, so transportation was very convenient. Otherwise, it would take 10 years to build a huge underground city. In less than half a month, all the materials that Yang Tian needed were gathered. Yang Tian heard that in order to obtain these materials, Hui Meow Meow had even gone to the distant cloud region and spent more than half of the Hui clan's wealth. At the same time, Yang Tian also received news that it wasn't just the Hui family. Other families were also starting to build new family lands. Some of the high-level talisman masters from the 3 shrines were invited by some clans to design new clan lands for them. It was said that the exotic beasts from the Milky Way had already ventured deep into this continent. It was estimated that another beast tide would erupt in less than 3 years. This was a strange world. In order to prevent the mechanical race from becoming stronger, the humans insisted on not using high-tech electronic devices. Even the cloud region was the same. Otherwise, the beast tide wouldn't be a big problem for humans. Yang Tian flipped through the history of this continent when he was free and finally found out the reason. It turned out that in the distant past, the automaton race relied on their fast reproduction speed and powerful attack power to almost unify the entire continent. They wanted to turn all humans with physical bodies into automatons. Under the combined suppression of the cultivators, the automaton race was weakened. From then on, humans no longer used high-tech electronic devices. Instead, they began to research talisman methods and used rune energy to replace electronic energy. After reading this history, Yang Tian took out a red crystal from his storage bracelet. This was left behind by a beautiful automaton woman during the last beast tide after her mechanical body was destroyed. From this crystal, it could be seen that the automaton race also used rune energy. Moreover, they weren't inferior to humans. It was worth mentioning that the automaton race could also cultivate. They could cultivate just like humans with physical bodies. However, their cultivation methods were completely different. As for what kind of cultivation methods they used, there were no detailed records in the history books. This was because this was a huge secret to the automaton race. Cultivators with physical bodies weren't interested in this either. Looking at the red crystal in his hand, Yang Tian had a vague feeling that he might need this item one day. Under the orders of the clan leader, the middle and low-level cultivators also joined the construction team. Millions of people took turns to dig the hole. In less than 3 months, they dug a V-shaped hole with a radius of more than 50 kilometers and a depth of 5,000 meters. Yang Tian was shocked by the speed of the work. Actually, there was nothing strange about this. The people of this world were strong to begin with. With the addition of cultivators to help transport soil and other materials, it was equivalent to simplifying the process. The rune energy produced by the rune array designed by the strange program repelled all the water vapor outside. During the construction process, not only was there no water seeping, even the sand and stones dug out from the bottom of the pit were very dry. It was worth mentioning that when they dug to a depth of 5,000 meters, they actually discovered a rich Laos crystal mine buried underground. This made the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars both happy and helpless, because they couldn't possibly find another place to dig such a big hole just for this Laos crystal mine, right? Therefore, they could only endure the pain and continue. After the hole was dug, the people of the Rune Division started to get busy again. They had to set up another rune array in this big hole to form a 3D projection. After this projection was completed, they started to use bluestones to surround this 3D projection and build the shape of the underground city. Xiaolong, after this place is completed, we will be the hunting division. Yang Tian said to the listless little blue dragon as he sat on a pile of bluestones and looked at the bustling scene in front of him. This period of time had been very boring for the little blue dragon. Yang Tian also felt the same. He felt as if his bones were about to rust. He didn't know if the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars would agree. Just as Yang Tian was deep in thought, a group of people walked over from afar. The leader was the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars. Half a step behind him was a beautiful woman who was comparable to the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars. This beautiful woman was dressed in a white robe. Her aura was completely different from the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars. She was like a fairy. Based on her appearance, she was about 27 or 28 years old. Behind this white-robed woman were more than 10 experts with powerful auras. These people were obviously not from the Radiance family. This was because they didn't have the Radiance family symbol on their bodies. The Radiance Disaster 100 Stars and the white-robed woman chatted as they walked. They were obviously talking about the underground city that was being built. The white-robed woman looked interested and nodded from time to time. Yang Tian looked at the white-robed woman a few more times before retracting his gaze. Then, he looked at the construction site in front of him. Although this underground city was designed by a strange program, if it was built, Yang Tian would have a strong sense of accomplishment. Yang Tian, you are here. Yang Tian was lost in his thoughts when the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars voice sounded not far away. Yang Tian turned his head and saw the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars leading the white-robed woman and her group over. Yang Tian, this is the leader of the 100 Sound family, 100 Sound Xian. Then the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars said to the white-robed woman, this is our family's talisman genius, Yang Tian. Female leader, and a beautiful woman. At this moment, Yang Tian was a little overwhelmed. He didn't understand why the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars had brought this female leader over. Chapter 655. Hello. Yang Tian stood up and nodded at the woman named by Ming Siyun. Were you the one who designed this underground city? Bei Ming Siyun asked with a smile as she sized up Yang Tian. Yes. Yang Tian nodded. Yang Tian, he only joined the Hui Yi clan recently, right? Beiming Xiyun turned her head and asked the Hui Yi Baixing. The Hui Yi Baixing smiled and nodded. All right, you wouldn't have any objections if I invited Yang Tian to join the Beiming clan, would you? Beiming Xiyun asked with a smile. When she said this, Beiming Xiyun looked very serious. She didn't seem to be joking. The Hui Yi Baixing laughed heartily. If Yang Tian is willing, I won't object. However, before he leaves, he has to help me complete the underground city. What do you think, Yang Tian? After the Hui Yi Baixing said this, he stared at Yang Tian. Yang Tian suddenly understood that this was probably a test from the Hui Yi Baixing. If he said that he wanted to leave the Hui clan, he would probably die once the underground city was completed. The Hui Yi Baixing usually looked very amiable and treated Yang Tian very well. However, if Yang Tian wanted to leave the Hui clan and join another clan, he would be an enemy to the Hui clan. The Hui Yi Baixing wouldn't show any mercy to his enemies. Countless clans in the Flame Domain were constantly competing with each other. Yang Tian didn't have any plans to leave the Hui Yi clan for the time being. He smiled and said, Clan leader, you must be joking. At least in the Flame Domain, I won't leave the Hui clan. After Yang Tian said this, Beiming Xiyun shook her head helplessly. She turned around and walked towards the large pit. The Hui Baixing was very satisfied that Yang Tian hadn't said that he would stay in the Hui Yi clan forever. This was because the Hui Yi family's foundation was in the Flame Domain. Yang Tian, you can't leave the Hui Yi family. The leader is so nice to you. After the group of people left, Hui Yi Chanchan ran over and pouted at Yang Tian. Yang Tian said, Don't worry, it won't happen. The news that the female god had appeared in the Cloud Domain had already spread throughout the entire continent. Yang Tian, who was in the Flame Domain, had only received some superficial information. However, the reaction of the cultivators in the Cloud region was great. The female god who came to the Cloud Domain did not go to the 3 shrines to receive the worship of the people. Instead, she went to the tallest mountain in the Cloud Domain and left behind 5 strange words on the top of the mountain. After the female deity left, countless cultivators flocked to the foot of the mountain. They looked up at the words and tried to guess what they meant. These were 5 traditional Chinese characters. Other than the cultivators from Earth, no one could recognize them. Some cultivators guessed that this was a way to cross the Star Ocean or a path. Some people guessed that the god had left behind a treasure on the continent, and that these words were where the treasure was buried. Some people guessed that this was a cultivation technique. As long as they understood the profound meaning of these words, they would be able to break through their current realm. The 3 shrines in the Cloud Domain were the Starry Sky Shrine, the Sky Domain Shrine, and the Limitless Shrine. In response to these 5 words, the 3 temple masters issued an announcement that whoever could unravel the secret of these 5 words would be able to become a temple master. A shrine master was a higher rank than a deacon in the shrines and had a lot of power. Compared to the position in the Superstar Shrine, a shrine master was equivalent to an ordinary divine general. In the shrines, a rank higher than a shrine master was the Grand Shrine Master. Above that was the deacon and then the shrine master. If he could become a manager in the temple, his future would be bright. This was because their cultivation resources for the rest of their lives were all provided by the shrines. Not only did a shrine master receive benefits from the shrines, but they would also receive gifts from various families during the shrine's recruitment test. This was a generous income for the shrines. Also, after becoming a shrine master, as long as they didn't make any major mistakes, they would be in the position for life. Deacons would be tested every once in a while. Those who failed would be kicked out of the shrines. After becoming a shrine master, they would be far away from this kind of test. They would even receive a lot of benefits during the test. The 5 words were copied down by the cultivators and then copied into countless copies. It didn't take long for almost every cultivator in the Cloud Domain to have a copy. Since he had nothing to do, Yang Tian took out the barbecue tools that Kacha had ordered and some special spices from this world to barbecue the meat. It turned out that these tools were all deformed after they were taken out of this world. They couldn't be used anymore. Seeing that Yang Tian was about to barbecue the meat, the little blue dragon immediately flew over and landed on the grill. After Yang Tian placed some charcoal in the grill, it opened its mouth and spat out dragon flames to ignite the charcoal. Yang Tian took out a large piece of fresh beast meat and cut it into palm-sized pieces. He sprinkled some powdery spices on it and placed it on the grill to barbecue. Soon, sizzling sounds came from the roasted meat, and the aroma of the meat spread out. Hui Chan watched curiously and expectantly as Yang Tian flipped the meat with a metal clamp. When the meat was cooked and Yang Tian placed it on a plate, she reached out and snatched the plate. However, before she could do anything, she saw a green shadow sweep across the plate, and a large piece of steaming meat was taken away by the little blue dragon. "You bad dragon! Greedy dragon! Give it back to me!" Hui Chan looked at the empty plate and was furious. She stomped her feet and threw the plate away. She roared and chased after the little blue dragon. However, the little blue dragon was too fast, and she couldn't catch up. Seeing this, Yang Tian couldn't help but laugh. "This meat tastes good." At this moment, Hui Miao walked over and said with a smile, "Barbecue meat. It smells good, right? Do you want a piece?" Yang Tian turned around and looked at Hui Miao and said with a smile. Hui Miao didn't say anything. She passed a piece of paper to Yang Tian and said, "Look at the words on it. Do you recognize them? I got this from a stone merchant when I went to the Cloud region. I heard that it was left behind by a god. I don't know if it has anything to do with runes." While Hui Miao was speaking, Yang Tian had already opened the folded paper. When he saw the words on it, his eyes opened wide. The words on the paper were written backwards. "Yang Tian, I will wait for you." Seeing these words, Yang Tian became very excited. This means that Qin Fei still remembers him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have left these words behind. "You recognize it?" Hui Miao asked when she saw Yang Tian's wide-open eyes and emotional appearance. Hui Miao's voice caused Yang Tian to come back to his senses. "I don't recognize it, but I have seen these words before. These should be words used by God." Yang Tian naturally didn't want to tell Hui Miao the contents of these words and casually made up a story. Hui Miao said, "God doesn't use these words. This is a new type of words. It's a pity that there are only 5 words. I can't understand its meaning." Yang Tian said, "Can I keep it? I can take it out and study it in the future. Maybe I can guess its meaning." Hui Miao nodded and then asked Yang Tian, "After this underground city is built, do you really want to go to the hunting division?" "Of course." Yang Tian said, "This kind of life and cultivation isn't suitable for me." As he spoke, Yang Tian placed a piece of roasted meat on a plate and passed it to Hui Miao. Hui Miao nodded and took the plate from Yang Tian's hand. The little blue dragon wanted to snatch it again. A green shadow flashed, but it was caught by Hui Miao. "Auntie, give it to me. I want to teach it a lesson." Seeing that her sister caught the little blue dragon, Hui Chan, who was panting from running, shouted. However, Hui Miao let go of the little blue dragon. This was because the little blue dragon had already opened its mouth and dragon flames were brewing in its mouth. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.